Wherever you are watching from tonight, settle a moment longer into the idea that you are listening to a very old lullaby, a music that floats between planets and stars. The universe hums with a gentle cadence, a rhythm that does not hurry. It invites you to float, to drift, to settle into the soft gravity of a distant world. And so we begin with a breath as slow as a planet's longest night, a breath that tastes faintly of starlight, cool as frost on glass, warm as a breath exhaled near a quiet campfire. In this opening lullaby, we meet the idea that there are worlds beyond our own solar stage, arranged in a vast, patient orchestra. Exoplanets, as they are called, are planets that orbit stars other than the Sun. They are not mere myths of the night. They are real, glittering worlds that circle suns we can barely imagine from our own beds. And there are thousands of them, a countless archipelago of orbits spread across the galaxy. They were not always known to us, but the universe loves to reveal its quiet rooms one by one. Since 1995, when a planet was discovered circling a star beyond our solar system, curious minds have found more and more of these gentle travelers. The number grows not by leaps, but by the patient creep of dawn through a fog, until the map of our ignorance begins to soften and widen. Imagine the long, quiet train ride of discovery, every mile marker another exoplanet revealed, another little world in a grand, calm procession. Let's speak in a circle, slowly, like ripples in a still pond. Are you ready to listen to how we know these faraway planets exist? One of the ways is through a soft, careful tenderness called a transit. When a planet crosses in front of its star from our point of view, the star's light dips just a trace, gone for a moment, then returning as if nothing had happened. It is not a loud event. It is a delicate, almost shy minute, a whisper of shade across the face of light. Astronomers watch these gentle eclipses, and from them they learn many things: the planet's size, its orbital speed, and the rhythm of how it circles its sun. The method is patient, the data is quiet, and the effect is pure. Imagine the light as a drumbeat that suddenly softens for a breath, a tiny shadow on a bright canvas, a secret kept by the star's own glow. And you drift deeper into a friendly, listening hush. Do you notice how your thoughts can drift as well, like a feather skimming the surface of quiet water? The discovery of exoplanets has not only taught us about the planets themselves, but about the stars they orbit and the spaces between. The first major step was to hear the subtle waver of a star's light, and to translate that wavering into a map of strangers making a home around a far-off sun. The telescope named Kepler taught us to listen in a particular way, the sort of listening that loves patterns, the kind that sees a drop in brightness, and with patience translates that drop into a planet. Later, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, or TESS, learned to listen as well, surveying the bright skies for those quiet eclipses that tell us a planet's gentle visit has begun. Consider how the night itself became a teacher, how a star and its planet began to reveal their choreography through the patience of human curiosity. And now, while you listen, let your imagination drift to the many forms these exoplanets wear. Not all worlds are alike. Some worlds so close to their stars that their days burn hot as embers and their skies glow with a perpetual sunset. These are the hot Jupiters, massive gas giants that orbit close to their suns, their atmospheres roaring with winds that carry heat from day to night in a single breath. Do you feel your own breath temper with such a thought, a heat and a coolness interlaced like a tide that never ceases, a tide inside your chest as well as in the heavens? Others are rocky and stubborn, similar in their solid hunger to earth, yet standing on far more brutal stairways of gravity, their surfaces perhaps scarred by ancient meteor rains or by planets that never quite settled into quiet. These are the super-Earths, worlds larger than our rocky heart, but smaller than the great ballads of gas giants. And there are the mini-Neptunes, worlds that carry thick atmospheres and misted skies, where you could imagine a world shrouded in seas of cloud and illuminated by a pale, all-encompassing glow. Tell me, as you listen to these descriptions, how does your own sense of time soften? The universe does not rush around its own axis. It sways in a slow waltz, a cosmic lullaby where a year on a distant world might last longer or shorter than a human heartbeat, depending on how fast that orbit carries its planet around its star. The clock of a planet is not our clock. It is a patient, folding thing, like the opening of a book you've read 100 times and still love to reread for the comfort of the lines that settle just right on your lips when you read them aloud to yourself in a whispered voice. In the same breath, we learn that not all planets remain steadfastly fixed in their places. Some wanderers do not remain tethered to a star at all. Rogue planets drift through interstellar space without a sun to warm their winds, a strange serenity about them as they roam the galaxy like silent boats on a night sea. They remind us that the cosmos, in its vast generosity, cradles not only order but also wild, unbound quietude. And here is another soft truth, a nuance wrapped in a velvet scripted line. Many worlds may lie in zones where liquid water could be possible. The habitable zone, the Goldilocks belt where conditions might be just right for life, as we know it, to linger, to glow, to dream. The habitable zone is not a guarantee. It is a possibility, a gentle hypothesis that the planet's distance from its star allows temperatures that can cradle oceans, not freeze them solidly like a winter coin, not boil them away into a mist. It is a space of potential, a margin of hope rather than a promise. When we picture a planet in the habitable zone, we imagine long, slow days, a sun that neither scorches nor freezes, and perhaps oceans that breathe and weather modest tides. But the truth remains that even within this zone, many other things matter. The strength of the planet's atmosphere, the presence of magnetic fields, the rhythm of its seasons, the subtle chemistry that could foster life or simply give us a world that is beautiful to behold as we drift through restful sleep. Would you like to linger with us in that thought for a quiet moment? The idea of habitability is a tapestry, not a single thread. A planet's atmosphere might cradle water in vapor, or it might cloak the world in haze that echoes with the scent of rain not yet fallen. The rates at which a star shines can push a delicate balance toward warmth or toward frost. Even a planet's climate could be shaped by storms that last weeks or months, lightning that does not crawl across the sky but hums as a soft undertone in the air. The mind, when it listens carefully, can sense the possibility of quiet seas, of a shoreline that never quite reaches the other shore, because the world spins in such a patient, slow manner that a day stretches into a longer sigh. It is a reminder that the cosmos is not a mere stage for grand fireworks. It is a library of small, intimate possibilities. And speaking of intimate possibilities, let us breathe together another thread of fact, very softly woven into our narrative. Exoplanetary atmospheres, those delicate layers that wrap a world, are sometimes accessible through the light they filter as it travels from the star through the planet's gaseous veil. When astronomers turn their instruments towards such a planet, they listen to how the starlight changes as it passes through the atmosphere. This is spectroscopy, a way of listening to the language of molecules. In some cases, scientists have detected hints of water vapor, a whisper of methane, faint carbon dioxide, or other chemical signs that tell us what the air might be made of. It is not a guarantee of life, nor even a guarantee of climate the same as ours. It is a hint of a breath, a planet exhaling a profile of its own skies. And the minds who study these hints are patient, careful, and kind, tending to the data with the same respect with which we tend to sleep, letting it settle until it becomes something we can understand without waking the night. I want you to listen again, softly, and allow another fact to settle into your awareness like a feather on the surface of a slow pond. Some exoplanets are not just one world with a single sky. They may be families of worlds bound by gravity and the gravitational pockets between them. In some systems, planets can share close, resonant dances, pulling on each other in ways that stabilize their orbits or gently nudge them into new rhythms. They can be caught in a cosmic waltz where the length of each planet's day and year interacts with another's, and the music of their orbits becomes a longer song that the night holds in its quiet breath. The thought of such multi-planet harmonies makes the night feel even more expansive, a domain where you could lie and listen and feel the soft pull of gravity like a hand cupping your shoulder in a comforting way. Now let's return to the ship of your imagination and set a small, specific scene within our otherwise wide celestial ocean. Picture a rocky world, perhaps modest in size, with a sky that glows with the pale light of a far-off star. Its day lingers long, and its night does not hurry to fade, because its days stretch like a lazy, comforting yawn. In this imagined dusk, you might find a quiet shoreline where the air smells faintly of iron and damp earth after rain. The tide arrives not with a loud crash, but with a soft, deliberate kiss, and the water's edge speaks in a language only the patient can hear. In such a world, the planet's gravity cradles you in a gentle hold. You could imagine lying on warm stones that have cooled from the sun's embrace, and letting the sea's whisper slide through your ears as if listening to a distant, soothing lullaby. It is a small, intimate vignette that makes the cosmic scale feel tender, as if even 1 billion miles away, a world could cradle you with the same careful care you crave as you fall asleep. Now breathe again and listen to the way wonder can settle into the body as merely a different kind of sleep. It is not heavy with questions that keep you awake, but light with possibilities that invite you to drift. The exoplanet's dance is not a grand, loud parade. It is a patient, continuous drift, a rotation of planets and stars that tells us you are not alone in quiet. You share the night with a universe that moves with you in slow time. The facts we have learned are not reasons to panic or to feel small. They are reasons to trust the pace of the world, to accept that knowledge can be as soft and supportive as a blanket, as a handshake across a long distance, as a whisper that says, "It's all right to sleep now." In our circle of words, we come around again to the gentle refrain. 4 or 5 clear notes, repeated in a way that makes your breath feel a part of the pattern. The first note is that there are thousands of exoplanets, circling stars in the Milky Way, each with its own quiet time and weather, each a possibility for a night's dream. The second note is transit, when a planet passes in front of its star and tells us of its size and its orbit in the language of light and shadow, a language that is carefully translated by patient hands and patient minds. The third note is the variety of worlds, hot Jupiters, swaddled in heat, and rocky super-Earths, and gassy mini-Neptunes, each with its own mood and its own horizon. The fourth note is the habitable zone, the soft belt where water could perhaps dream into liquid form, depending on the star's warmth and the world's own breath. The fifth note is atmospheres, thin veils of air that reveal themselves in the way starlight dances through them, sometimes telling us of water vapor, or sometimes only telling us of a sky that is not Earth's, but still beautiful in its alien quiet. The sixth note is the idea of wandering planets, rogue wanderers that drift through the galaxy, without a star to cradle them, but still carrying with them the memory of a solar song. As we listen, your body grows heavier with the ease that sleep offers. Your limbs soften, your shoulders loosen, your jaw unclenches, your eyes grow heavy behind closed lids. The night is patient. It does not hurry you. It waits with a soft, almost mischievous light, as if it knows that the mind's most restful work is often done in the spaces between thoughts. In this space, you are free to drift from one thought to another, to dissolve into the small, tender wonders of a universe that loves to teach us how to be still. If you should wonder about a question tonight, let it rest with you for a moment. What would it be like to walk on a world in the habitable zone, where the air tastes of rain and the sea is a mirror of a pale sun? You may answer by not answering, by simply letting the moment's curiosity drift aside for a while, so sleep can come with its own soft answer. Let us carry one more gentle thread through the chamber of your mind. If a planet is in an orbit that is not perfectly circular, its distance to the star changes during its year, and with that, its climate can swing between warmer and cooler phases. It is a reminder that the cosmos does not insist on monotony. It offers a nuanced, soft variation, a subtle variation that teaches us to endure the changing weather of our own minds as well. The human mind, like a planet, can learn to endure shifts, to adapt to rest, to become more resilient in sleep's quiet schooling. In such knowledge there is comfort, the idea that even the most complex dances can be learned by the patient body and the patient heart. And now, with these thoughts threaded through the lamplit quiet of your room, imagine again that a planet's horizon glows with a quiet, gentle color, the color of a sunset that lingers longer than you expect, the color of a dream that holds you not in a rush, but with the certainty that you can drift again whenever you wish. If you look, you may see a faint glow on the far edge of the night, a halo from a distant star whose planet barely kisses its star's light. You may feel a small sense of gratitude for the careful science that allows us to imagine such places, a gratitude that settles in your chest the way a soft rain settles on a silent city. So we continue to drift, to float, to settle into the knowledge that the night is a map of gentle possibilities. The exoplanets we speak of are not distant toys of a curious mind. They are real worlds with real rhythms, even if we cannot yet stand upon their surfaces or breathe their skies. They remind us that sleep and awe can share a room, that wonder does not demand action, but invites calm. You are here, and that is enough for this moment. Your breath is enough, your heartbeat is enough, your quiet attention is enough to become part of the story the night tells about distant places that still feel close when we listen with care. If you would like a closing image before sleep carries you away, imagine a planet turning slowly, its day length long and its night length longer. A world where twilight lingers like a soft shawl draped over the horizon. The star it orbits glows with a steady, patient light, a lamp that never breaks, a beacon that seems to say, "Stay." And in your mind's ear you hear, perhaps, a distant sea sighing, a sound you know from the shore's edge, a sound that means it is safe to let go a little more. The planet's gentle gravity, not a force to bind you to a single place, but a memory of a patient touch, helps you relax. You float a fraction of a breath longer and then drift a little deeper. As sleep comes, know this. You are a traveler of a quiet interior universe, and every breath you take is an oar in your own small boat, rowing through a sea of stars within you. The night will hold you gently, the bed will cradle you, and the cosmos will keep its slow, generous rhythm at your side. You will see your own dreams like tiny satellites circling your waking world, moving with a grace that only a calm mind can summon. And when morning comes, you may awake with a softer heart, a softer gaze, a softer sense that the world beyond your window is still there, patient, expansive, and kind. You may sleep now, or you may simply rest your mind in peaceful stillness for a while longer, letting the gentle silhouettes of exoplanets shepherd you toward the night's deeper quiet. I will be here as you float deeper, not to hurry you, but to accompany you through the next soft lapses of sleep, the next small journeys between thoughts. The dance of distant worlds continues beyond our sight, but in this moment, their music carries you like a leaf on a quiet river, drifting, dissolving, and becoming new, as all good sleep does, soft, unhurried, and true. Close your eyes and listen. The night is a patient teacher, bending the horizon until it becomes a quiet sea, and in that sea, your breath is a small boat, gliding, gentle, toward a distant shore of light. You may, if you wish, just listen to the slow tick of a cosmic clock, the steady rhythm of a universe that keeps time not with seconds, but with the slow, tender drift of possible worlds. You may, if you like, let your thoughts drift like a feather upon a still pool, and as you drift, imagine a map of the night spread out before you, a map of quiet possibilities, of exoplanets circling suns far beyond your sight. Let us begin with the soft sense that there are more worlds than there are stars you can see. Or perhaps more precisely, there are thousands of planets circling suns that glow in the distances. You could say the cosmos hums with tiny, glittering particles of gravity and light, each planet a whisper of a world that might be, a version of a world that could be as close as your breath, and as far as your childhood dreams of what lies beyond the pale blue daily daylight. The idea settles in your chest like a seed, waiting for a slow fall rain of quiet to sprout. Yes, there are exoplanets, and yes, they outnumber the stories we tell about them, because every star might keep one or more of these gentle travelers in its embrace. And you, listening now, are part of that long, patient listening. You are a traveler of senses. You are a patient receiver of signals. If you listen closely, you may hear the whisper of a fact tucked in the soft weave of night. There exist many kinds of worlds. Some wear mantles of storms and fire, hot Jupiters, gas giants that orbit their suns as if they were chasing the warm edge of a flame. Imagine a planet the size of a giant, heavy with cloud and wind, and yet it circles so close to its star that the day side bakes and the night side sighs with coolness you can barely imagine from where you are. The seas on these worlds would burn with color you could not name, while the nights would press to your mind with a hush more powerful than thunder. You may breathe in the thought, even a world anchored in the sun's bright breath can be almost too bright for our own comfort. Do you feel the difference between a whispered breeze and a hurricane's roar? It is a gentle map of contrasts, guiding your calm toward a wider view and inviting you to relax into the possibility that not every wonder must be observed with a raised heartbeat. You may drift there if you wish. And perhaps you have noticed a quieter kind of planet, a world closer in size to your own Earth, a world that sits in what scientists call the habitable zone, the precise warmth that might cradle oceans, not too hot and not too cold, a space where liquid water could, in principle, slip through the rough edges of rock and become memory and form again. The idea here is like a lullaby for the imagination. There are planets where life, as we know it, might find a way to linger, a place where seas could be imagined to exist, where the blue of a distant sky might one day be seen by eyes that still remember to breathe. You can let that idea hover, soft as a moth's wing, and you may permit yourself to rest into its possibility without feeling pressure to know more than the gentle truth that curiosity inspires, not rushes ahead. If you listen to the details of how we know these planets, you might hear a method as patient as a grandmother turning the pages of a book in a quiet room. One method is the transit, the little shadow a planet makes when it passes between its star and your telescope. When that shadow passes, the star's light dips, ever so slightly, like a candle's glow softening as a droplet of water lands on the wick. The science of that small dip tells us the planet's size, and when it repeats with a reliable cadence, we begin to know the rhythm of its year, its seasons, the length of its days, the way gravity conducts its slow music. You may listen to that method as you would listen to rain against window glass, tiny, precise, and enough to tell a story without asking more than your breath can bear. You may permit yourself to drift into the sound of that measurement and let your body respond with a natural, deep breath, slow and even, as if your lungs themselves were keeping time with a cosmic rhythm. Another instrument is the radial velocity technique, the way a star wobbles when a planet tugs at it with gravity, a tug so gentle that it becomes almost a whisper. With this whisper, we infer the planet's mass, the weight it carries around its sun, the quiet force that keeps such distant dancers in their circles. It is a reminder that even the most distant waltz has a gravity, a memory of steps taken in the darkness, a memory that reaches us through careful listening and the patience of many nights. You may feel that patience in your own body, a slow, secure anchor. Let your shoulders settle, your jaw loosen, your hands rest where they lie, and imagine yourself listening to the stars whisper, a whisper you translate into a breath that grows longer, deeper, more even, while your mind remains relaxed and attentive in equal measure. And here is another gentle truth about the cosmos, a story that arrives as a small, luminous fact. There are far-off planets that float free, unbound to any star, like quiet travelers wandering through the dark, choosing their own path through the velvet emptiness. These rogue planets drift through space, not tethered to the warmth of a solar home, and yet they carry their own inner weather, sometimes with faint glows of residual heat or the distant memory of oceans that might once have dried within their crusts. You may imagine such a rogue planet as a soft, solitary boat, gliding through a sea of black, with no star to guide the compass, but with a pace that is yours to set, a pace that invites you to drift more deeply into your own tranquil voyage. Do you feel how the absence of a nearby star doesn't diminish wonder here, but rather shifts it, turning wonder into a personal, ceremonial ascent into silence? Now, let us stitch 4 more world-weaving threads into this quiet tapestry, each a small fact that helps the mind settle, like letting the last tremor of a storm pass before sleep. First, consider the diversity of worlds. The galaxy hums with planetary shapes that can be rocky and compact, like the shells of small, sturdy creatures beneath a lunar tide. There are worlds the size of Earth, perhaps cast from the same blueprint of chance and chemistry, their cores perhaps beating with iron and rock, their atmospheres brushing shoulders with thin veils of gas. There are super-Earths, bigger cousins of our own planet, where weight and gravity might press the air into different songs, and there are sub-Neptunes, worlds larger than Earth but smaller than Neptune, with layers of gas that would hush a storm into a sigh. You may picture a gentle spectrum of planets, each a note in a quiet orchestra. Which note invites your breath to slow and deepen? Which note helps your body settle more fully into the bed of this moment? Second, the possibility of oceans lapping a distant shore is a soothing image, a soft invitation to hope without urgency. The habitable zone is not a guarantee, and it is not a map with a single destination. It is a corridor of potential, a corridor that invites us to dream about what could be possible for water, air, and life, should a world have the right mixture of warmth and time. You can let this thought uncoil like a ribbon, no pressure to find the final answer, only the gentle sense that the cosmos often keeps its secrets with a patient grace. If you wish, you may picture a coast on a far-off planet, the sea catching light in a way that makes you think of dawn, stillness, and the soft sound of evening waves. Yet you can rest easy knowing that the reality of oceans is something our minds infer with care and care alone, an interpretation that invites you to become more comfortable with ambiguity, to savor the relaxation that comes when questions sleep a little longer than the daydreams. Third, the scale of distance invites a mindfulness practice that helps you breathe with the universe rather than against it. When we say a planet is many light years away, we are saying that the photons we see today began their journey long before your current breath finds its way into the present. A photon from a distant exoplanet might have left its star long ago, and only now, after a journey of years, does it reach us to be perceived as a pale spark in the night. You may allow the sense of distance to become a kind of lullaby, a reminder that time itself is part of the night's music, that the universe does not hurry, and neither should you. When you breathe in, imagine drawing in the long history of light, the patient travel of information across the cosmic sea. When you breathe out, let a trace of worry dissolve, as if you were pouring salt from a bottle back into the sea you are currently floating on, a sea of calm and quiet space. Fourth, imagine that scientists are continually reading the faint glimmers of these worlds, and that each new discovery is like a soft beacon, a small firefly in the dark of space. There are more candidates, more worlds to listen to, more ways to tell the quiet stories of what might exist beyond the glare of our own sun. You may feel a gentle pride in that process, a feeling of belonging to a species that loves to listen, to measure, to imagine, and to sleep a little more soundly, because the universe is not a mystery to be solved by force, but a wonder to be explored with care, patience, and a steady gaze. And in this moment, you may allow your shoulders to relax a fraction further, your chest to rise with a deeper stillness, and your mind to travel along the edges of those possibilities without needing to chart every course. As the night deepens and your breath becomes a soft, even tide, you might ask yourself a small, soothing question, almost whispered, almost a gentle invitation. What if the most relaxing truth about exoplanets is not a fact to be memorized, but a mood to be felt? What if the point of learning about distant worlds is not to win a race of knowledge, but to slow your pace enough to hear the galaxy exhale? You may answer that question with your body by letting your neck loosen, your spine lengthen with a subtle buoyancy, and your limbs settle into the sheets as though they were a quiet, welcoming harbor after a long voyage. You may permit yourself to drift in this mood, to let the mind wander to a place where science and serenity converge, where curiosity rests atop a cushion of sleep. Now, with these ideas cradled softly in your awareness, we return to the listening of the night's breath. You are not rushing toward a conclusion, but letting a narrative of distance unfold at the pace of your own heart. Inhale slowly and notice the cool, crisp air filling your lungs, as if you are sipping a tranquil nebula through your own breath. Exhale gradually, releasing tension, letting it dissolve into the dark of the room, dissolving into the quiet beyond the ceiling, becoming part of the hush that is always here when you choose to listen. You may let your hands rest more peacefully against the blankets, your fingers soft and relaxed, your feet unfurrowed and content, your jaw unclenched, your eyes closed, your thoughts like gentle ripples on a lake that never quite disturbs the surface. I invite you to settle a few senses more, to invite stillness into each one. Listen to the sounds near you, the soft creak of a chair, the distant hum of a household that is quietly sleeping too. Let these sounds be your practice in present tense calm, a reminder that you exist in a world where small things carry large weight in the art of quiet. You may choose to anchor yourself by noticing the sensation of your breath at the tip of your nose or at your chest. Feel your chest rise and fall in a patient cadence, a rhythm that resembles the gentle orbital dance of a planet around an invisible star. You might sense the air brushing your skin as if a light stellar breeze is tipping the curtains just enough to bless you with a cooler night, a cooler breath. Let yourself drift with this sensation, as if your entire body is a sail catching an invisible wind that gently props you up toward a place where dreams begin. In this tranquil travelogue through space and circumstance, there are still more little lights to admire, like distant stars that blink in a soft, patient way. One such light is the knowledge that a planet's atmosphere can tell us about its world without ever stepping foot on it. The colors and the molecules in a distant sky whisper stories of warmth, pressure, and weather, and we translate them with quiet care, as if reading a love letter etched into light. You may imagine the idea as a soft glow on your eyelids, a warm ember that sits there, bright enough to reassure but not bright enough to disturb your sleep. Let the glow spread into your temples, your forehead, your cheeks, until your entire face is relaxed and the glow breathes in you and out of you with your own breath. Take a moment to consider another gentle facet. Every small measurement, every careful observation is a bridge between a distant world and your own bedside. The cosmos does not demand your attention with urgency. It invites your attention with a patient smile. When the night listens, and when you listen, you share a quiet fellowship with scientists and dreamers who have learned to be patient, who have learned that sleep itself is a kind of slow, generous translation of one language into another, the language of stars into the language of our own experience. You may say to yourself, with a soft, approving nod of your inner self, you are allowed to rest. You are permitted to sink ever so slightly deeper into this moment, to let the world's vastness cradle you in a protective, velvet calm. And if you ever find your mind tugging toward plans or hunts for the next great discovery, you can gently guide it back to breath, back to the sanctuary of the present. Imagine a tiny door inside your chest, a door that opens only to calm and to wonder. On the other side of that door, the galaxy folds its wings and settles. The stars become more like notes on a staff than distant specks, and the music this staff makes is a lullaby of possibility. You may hear the faint chime of a distant telescope as it tunes to another night, another target, another world that might someday reveal its secrets. You may let that golden possibility be a guiding star that gently leads you towards sleep, not a destination, but a companion on the journey. A related moment might be the cool, deep quiet of a night on a world where a blue-green ocean glimmers beneath a pale, aging star. You don't have to swim or sail there to feel the relief of knowing such seas might exist somewhere beyond the map you carry in your pocket. You may simply lie back and imagine the faint lift of a tide, the way the water meets shore with the soft chorus of 100 distant birds, and the way those birds never shout to be heard. They only soothe the world with their presence, a reminder that a distant place can still feel familiar in its gentleness. Let yourself become that shoreline, the edge of a dream where water meets land, where the boundary dissolves between memory and possibility, and you are safe here, now, in the quiet presence of the night. We return again to a simple, comforting cadence, the breath, the body, the room. You may feel now how your body sinks a fraction deeper into the bed, how your muscles release their small tensions, how your thoughts become lighter, more distant, like ships passing on a calm sea. You are allowed to drift with the slow gravity of the universe. You are allowed to float beyond the day's noise, to float toward a space where the mind has room to rest, to breathe, to imagine, to listen. In the end, what remains is a quiet sense of belonging to the night, to the space between stars, to the patient, unhurried science that maps the unknown not as a problem to solve at once, but as a friend to be learned from slowly, one peaceful step at a time. You belong to a world where 1, there are many kinds of exoplanets, from rocky Earth-like bodies to gassy giants and everything in between. 2, some planets orbit very close to their stars, becoming hot homes where the idea of ordinary comfort would be different from ours, yet still a source of wonder. 3, there are Earth-sized worlds in the habitable zone, where oceans might exist and life might dream of beginnings. 4, we discover them with careful, patient methods, the transit that softens starlight, the wobble that reveals gravity's steady hand. 5, some worlds drift freely through space, unbound to suns, carrying their own quiet weather in the vast, open dark. 6. Our measurements stretch across light years, letting light and time become delicate threads linking us to distant skies. You might hold these truths softly in your mind, like a warm cup of tea cradled in both hands as you listen to the night. A final invitation just for your comfort. You may stay awake for a little while longer, or you may surrender to sleep, trusting that the universe's quiet music will keep listening for you. You may stay in this listening, or you may drift into the soft black at the corners of your eyes, where the world gently dissolves into a velvet hush. You may let your breath fall into a comfortable rhythm, a slow, steady tide that comes and goes without effort, a tide that cradles you in the boat of now. You may let your thoughts settle as dust in sunlight, so that nothing remains but the memory of calm and the spoken word of sleep that has walked with you through the night. As you lie here, resting, the cosmos continues to tell its story, not in sentences and conclusions, but in tones and possibilities. The night forgives you for asking questions and forgiving you again for wanting to know more, while also offering you the most patient answer of all. Rest, so breathe in and breathe out. Let the room grow quieter around you, and let your mind unfold like a soft map of the galaxy, with lines that connect your breath to distant suns and your heart to distant seas. You are safe. You are still, you are listening. The universe keeps its secrets close, and in this moment, its secret is simply, sleep now and wake later with a gentler sense of wonder, ready to listen again, ready to dream again, ready to drift with the distant suns until morning comes to cradle you once more. Fact 1 drifts into your awareness like a pale moon rising over a calm bay. Water is not rare in the cosmos. It is one of the faithful companions of the universe, a molecule that shows up in ice, in vapor, in liquid form where climate and gravity have found a way to keep it in balance. On many distant worlds, oceans can exist because pressure presses the liquid into life and weather, and the warmth of starlight or the steam of internal heat does not vanish the current of the sea. Picture a world where the surface glows with the soft blue of liquid water, a vast sheet that stretches beyond the edges of what you can imagine as land. There, the sea might be deep, perhaps tens of kilometers, or perhaps shallower and more intimate, a place where the light from a neighboring sun flickers through the water like a lantern in a gentle night. You can let your mind wander to that world, not with specifics you cannot hold, but with the simple sense that water is there, present enough to shape the day and the night, to carry the songs of currents and currents of life, to cradle the weather in its wide, patient hands. You may allow yourself a tiny, comforting pause. You may let the idea of breathless calm travel through you as if carried on a tide. And as you listen, you might notice a second fact, a soft and steady echo behind the first. Water takes many forms in the universe, and it does not demand a single life for itself. Water can be liquid on the surface, or trapped in the deep ice that forms under pressure, or on the night side of a frigid planet. Imagine a world where huge oceans lie beneath an icy crust, where the shell is a fragile, glimmering lid, and underneath, the sea carves quiet roots through rock and salt. Their hydrothermal vents may glow in the darkness, giving life a patient foundation, or perhaps they simply emit the old, slow music of heat and mineral. It is soothing to consider that water does not simply vanish in the cold. It can endure, persisting in forms that keep the possibility of life close, even when the day star is distant and the wind from home is a memory. Now this is the moment to hear a small, almost whispered permission. You are allowed to imagine without the weight of proof. You can float with the second fact and let it settle gently within you. Fact 2 arrives like a tide you have known forever. Water can exist in a global ocean environment on large, steady worlds that might lack continents as we know them. Picture a planet that wears water as a single, boundless ocean, the color of a quiet morning, with no stark landmasses breaking the surface, and perhaps islands of microecosystems floating within, like gentle questions adrift on the skin of the sea. In such a world, cycles of heat and cool, evaporation and rain would still move across the globe, turning over the liquid surface and refilling its pools with quiet intention. A sea without shorelines is not a barren possibility. It is simply a different rhythm of life, a different map of gravity and weather, a different way the planet learns to breathe through its ocean. You can drift with this idea and notice how it lends the mind a stillness, as if the very thought of vast water has become a lullaby that travels at the speed of a sigh. Let your breath become a soft current and allow a mini story to unfold in your imagination. A quiet crew on a small vessel, perhaps no bigger than a dream, sails across an extreme ocean, one that does not rage or roar, but hums with a blue, patient tenor. The ship moves with the planet's slow heartbeat, riding gentler waves that rise and subside as if counting seconds with a careful, loving arithmetic. The crew speaks in hushed tones, not because there is fear, but because there is reverence for the world they inhabit. They watch for signs of life in the water, perhaps a shimmer of bioluminescent plankton in the dark, or a solitary creature that glides beneath the hull in its own measured patience. In this gentle fable of the sea, there is no sudden storm to claim the night. There is only the soft, constant evidence that water is here, and that life could be here too, if the world is willing to cradle it with enough time and a long, quiet lesson in resilience. You listen to the imagined creak of the deck as the ship slides across the glassy surface, and you feel yourself in that moment, as if the ship's calm is the room's own calm, and the sea's rhythm is a mirror for your breathing. We come now to a third quiet truth, a fact that behaves like a patient companion who knows how to fade into the margins of awareness, leaving you with nothing but a gentle sense of wonder. Fact 3. Water is not only liquid on distant planets. It is a stubborn and magnificent substance that can take the form of ice beneath shells of crust, or as high-pressure ice at depth, where the molecules lock into exotic lattices and still carry the memory of the sea above. On some worlds, you might imagine the ice forming a bright, crystalline crust so thick that you cannot see the sea below, yet you can feel its warmth through the ice itself, a subtle glow of heat traveling upward, whispering of currents and thermal vents. It's a tranquil paradox. Water, the most fluid of companions, can also become something as still and enduring as a gemstone, a shield of ice around the hidden ocean. Pause to sense this possibility. Nothing about water requires a familiar image of waves and shorelines. It is enough that water, in some form, exists, remains, and shapes the way a planet keeps its own breath. You may permit yourself to settle into that paradox, letting the mind rest in the comfort of two truths at once: the liquid sea and the icy crust, the movement and the stillness, the ceaseless change and the patient constancy. As you drift deeper into the quiet, you may notice the next idea arriving like a distant cloud that dissolves when rain arrives. Fact 4 speaks softly of weather and atmosphere. Water vapor can fill the skies of distant worlds, creating layers of clouds that glow with sunlight or starlight, depending on the planet's mood. You might picture a world where the atmosphere is saturated with water vapor, and a delicate drizzle rain falls not in a single track, but in a slow musical cascade across the night. In such climates, rain can vary in tempo and texture, from the gentlest drips to a warm, misty shower that plays on the leaves of alien flora. The rain on a far world does not need to resemble rain on Earth to be soothing. It can be a familiar lullaby, soft, persistent, and endlessly patient, falling through an air that carries the scent of salt and mineral and something almost familiar, something you could call home if you let your heart drift long enough. You count your breaths, and the clouds drift by, and you realize that even on these distant tides, water's weather speaks a universal language. The language of calm, the language of release, the language of letting go of storm and worry in equal measure. Fact 6, and it drifts in like a gentle dawn, concerns depth and mystery. The way water behaves when it is pressed to the extreme, when temperatures climb and the pressure grows heavy around it. On some exoplanets, near guts of blue-green gales or the inner warmth of a sun, water can pass beyond ordinary understandings into a state called supercritical fluid. In that realm, the liquid and gas forms mingle in a single, continuous phase, dissolving minerals and becoming a kind of super water that knows no boundaries between ice and vapor and liquid. It is a strange, beautiful image, a reminder that water is not simply marshaled into the boxes we know. It can stretch beyond them into a spectrum that invites contemplation rather than fear. Let this thought rest lightly on you. Even when nature goes beyond what we can touch with our hands, it does so with a quiet continuity that invites us to marvel without forcing certainty. You can hear the soft hiss and sigh of such a world, not as alarm, but as invitation, an invitation to witness the mystery with a calm, open mind. Now you might hear a soft, almost imperceptible music that accompanies your drift, a chorus of tiny droplets tapping on the hull of a ship in the far reaches of a dream-world ocean, a lullaby played by the rain on alien windows, a whisper of wind across ice and water that sounds like a distant drumbeat. This music is not a memory. It is an invitation to continue letting go, to keep your attention half soft, half sentient, following the flow of water from source to sea to sky to breath. You may grant yourself permission to settle even more deeply into the moment. You may tell yourself, in the gentlest possible voice, that it is perfectly acceptable to let the mind become a calm ocean, to let thoughts rise and fall like surf, but not overwhelm the shore. It is okay to drift. It is even better to drift with intention, to choose stillness as a practice and as a gift to the body that carries you through the night. If you wish, you can revisit the many stories that have unrolled so far and expand them just a fraction in your imagination. The ship on the glassy sea may drift toward a glow on the horizon, a sign, perhaps of life, or perhaps of a star's halo reflecting off a distant wave. A creature may surface at the water's edge, not to startle you, but to remind you that even in the quietest corners of the galaxy, curiosity remains a companion. The rain on the exoplanet's atmosphere could slow to a sweet hush, like the soft syllables of a lullaby spoken by a parent who has learned to speak in the almost silent language of care. The ice crust, if you let your mind linger there, might glitter because of the heat below, which is a memory of warmth and a promise that the world below still listens to the sun's distant touch. You can allow these images to rest at the edge of your awareness, not demanding attention, but offering themselves as small, comforting lights that keep your mind from wandering too far into the night's darker corners. Now, as you breathe in once more, consider how these 6 facts, these gentle truths about water on far worlds, have stacked themselves into something like a shoreline you can walk without leaving your bed. You are not forced to face the ocean's full breadth or all its unknowns. You are invited to walk along its quiet, forgiving edge, stepping in and out of the water with only the softest footprints, leaving no trace but your own breath. The ocean on the other side of the cosmos does not require you to swim across it tonight. It only asks that you listen to its invitation to relax, to release, to become a little lighter than before. If you allow it, you can carry a last small image with you, a single droplet of water, suspended in the air for a fraction of a moment, glinting with starlight, and then joining the quiet flow again, becoming part of something larger, part of the planet's breath, part of the universe's patient story. Let that image be your anchor as you settle further, the droplet dissolving into your own inner tide, returning you to a place of stillness where thoughts drift like leaves on a gentle stream. You may stay here as long as you wish, listening to the soft, unhurried music of water and wind, of ice and heat, of distant oceans whose shores are not yet known, but whose presence, in some form, has always been with you. In the end, the most relaxing fact about oceans on far worlds is not the map of depths or the charted lines of climate, but the simple invitation that water extends to you, to breathe, to listen, to rest. It asks only to be present with you, to be the steady background against which your body slow dances into sleep. So let it be so. Let your shoulders drop, your jaw soften, your palms float open, and your heart settle into the soft, welcoming rhythm of a tide that never rushes, never frets, only keeps time with you. You are here, you are safe, you are part of the universe's patient lullaby, and the oceans of distant worlds cradle you in their quiet, unhurried embrace. You drift, soft as a feather, into a quiet room where the clock's heartbeat slows to a patient, breathing rhythm. The window of your mind lets in a pale glow from a distant sun, a candle in a galaxy that never truly flickers out. Light, heat, and the calm of space. These are not loud technologies or loud discoveries, but a delicate invitation to listen, to feel, to settle. The universe is generous with its quiet truths, and you are learning to hear them in the hush between breaths. So you let your shoulders melt downward, your jaw unclench, your tongue rest flat against the roof of your mouth, and you lean toward the soft, slow pulse of the cosmos. As you ease into the night, a quiet horizon unfurls before you. The horizon is not a boundary, but a gentle border where light and dark meet and mingle, where the edges of possibility blur into a velvet continuum. In this reach of space, where stars are not just points but conversations, you discover a simple fact that feels almost like a lullaby. There are exoplanets of astonishing variety, circling stars you will never meet and climates you might never touch. Yet their existence arrives to your ears as a whisper of wonder. The variety itself is a kind of patience, a reminder that the universe does not hurry its stories. It unfolds them at the pace of light and the pace of breath, and you begin to settle into that tempo. Close your eyes and imagine a planet that is a world of extremes, where heat and wind become a single, continuous song. It is a hot Jupiter, a planet enormous enough to cradle a family of storms, yet close enough to its star that the dayside glows with a heat that makes the air shimmer. The winds there become surgeons of the weather, slicing through the atmosphere with gusts that can bend time itself in your imagination. On some nights, the telltale signature of the planet's dayside radiance travels around its surface so fast that the night side never fully settles. A perpetual whisper of warmth remains, a constant reminder that heat, when given a path, can roam as freely as a river. You don't need to visit to sense the dream. The idea of such a world invites your own breath to harmonize with a wind you've never seen, a wind you can feel as a gentle tug at your collarbone, a polite nudge toward rest. Lay your palm against the memory of a calmer place, a window that looks toward a different star. In this direction of your mind's telescope, a planet sits in the habitable zone, the ring of space where the sunshine is not too fierce, where the temperature might coax water into something more than mist. It's easy to think of such a world as a guarantee, a back pocket promise that life could be possible there. But the quiet comes in a careful, honest way. A planet may lie in the habitable zone, yet a star's temperament, the star's flares and storms, can complicate the scene beyond our simple hope. Imagine Proxima Centauri b, a world that rests in the warm embrace of a small, active star. It is a place that says, gently, that habitability is a nuanced idea, not a guarantee stamped on a map. Flares might rearrange the atmosphere, or wash across the air with ultraviolet banners that you cannot see, but can feel in the tremor of a leaf in a storm here on Earth. The lesson is not fear, but patience. The climate of a distant world is a story being written, and you are listening. You breathe again, and with the breath comes a second, patient fact. The cosmos is full of super-Earths and mini-Neptunes, worlds larger than our home, but not so large that they become strangers to us. They sit somewhere on a spectrum, with densities that hint at hidden interiors. Some wear thick atmospheres like cloaks, perhaps with oceans or skies that glow with unusual colors, while others show signs of compressed heft, a rocky core wrapped in pressure and mystery. The voice of this fact is not a lecture, but a song of scale and texture. When you think of a super-Earth, your mind pictures a place that feels solid beneath your feet, yet not so heavy that night would fall all at once. When you picture a mini-Neptune, you sense a moodiness, a depth, a possibility of seas swirling under miles of hazy clouds that shine with the light of stars. If you listen closely, you can hear a tiny, cautious murmur. Some of these worlds might cradle oceans of their own, or thick atmospheres that keep a kind of balance, a quiet equilibrium, so that life, as we might imagine it, could dream a little closer to reality than we first suppose. And then you notice a third thread. There are worlds that hum with a different kind of warmth, worlds so intimate with their stars that they become almost lava siblings in the mind's eye. A planet like 55 Cancri E has sparked imaginations as a lava world. The surface might wear a crust of molten rock under a sky that glows with a heat unfit for ordinary daylight. The mind wants to explore such heat and then gently withdraw, to step back from the edge where the ground becomes fire and the air turns to mist of rock. The beauty, though, is not in the danger, but in the possibility that calm can exist at the edge of fierce light. You are reminded that even in a cosmos of extreme conditions, there is a place for a quiet moment, a quiet map drawn not on land, but in the mind's own soft pulse. If you can carry that image for a while, it becomes a meditation on resilience, that a world can be harsh and still be a place to breathe, to dream, to rest. The world of discovery, too, speaks softly to your listening heart. The way we learn about these distant places is a kind of listening practice, a ceremony of patient attention. When you sit with the idea of finding exoplanets, you are not chasing rapid conclusions, but welcoming slow, careful observations. One breeze in this practice is the transit, the momentary dip in a star's brightness when a planet passes in front of it. It is a tiny sigh across the star's face, a moment when the star gives a little of its light to tell us, here is a size, here is a boundary, here is a shadow that helps us understand what lies beyond. The other breeze is the wobble, the star's subtle motion in response to the planet's gravity. It is not a shout, but a whisper. A star's rhythm can reveal the planet's mass, and mass, in turn, can tell us something about what the world might be made of. These methods are not loud instruments. They are patient listeners tuned to the tempo of the universe, and you are learning to listen along. In your quiet, you wander into the sensation of distance as a kind of comfort. The exoplanet catalogue is not a list of conjured fantasies, but a living map of how life could stretch beyond the cradle of Earth. The exoplanet realm reminds you that light travels at a patient pace, that heat travels at a different pace, and that your own breath can act as a clock that keeps even the farthest horizons company. The more you breathe, the more the room around you seems to expand, not with a void, but with a gentle, generous space. It is as if every planet's story is a thread, and each thread is woven into a larger, softer fabric, the fabric of possibility, the fabric of calm. You rest into that feeling. You allow the idea of distant seas and windy skies to relax your shoulders further. Another thread, woven into this quiet tapestry, is perhaps the most comforting of all, the commonality of science's curiosity. Humans have always wanted to know what lies beyond the edge of what we can see and touch. Exoplanets are the current, patient answer to that ancient ache, to know that the universe is not a closed room, but a vast hall with many doors. The doors open slowly, and peering through them, we glimpse clever methods, transits that reveal size and orbit, spectral fingerprints that hint at composition, the mathematics of curves that tell us how much mass a planet holds. The act of discovery itself is an act of invitation. You are invited to imagine what a world might feel like, what a world might taste or smell or look like under alien skies. You do not need to travel. You merely settle into the idea and let it travel toward you, soft as a feathered breeze. Let a fourth truth drift into your awareness, a gentle reminder about water, air, and climate. In many exoplanets, the weather already exists in your mind's eye as a possible tension between light and warmth. Water in the cosmos, in any real sense, remains a hopeful concept, yet the possibility lingers like a lock that might someday yield its key. Some planets might cradle seas beneath thick atmospheres or hold hidden oceans beneath icy crusts, or host clouds that shimmer with rain of exotic minerals. The instructions of climate here are not instructions for a scientist alone. They become a guide for you to regulate the temperature of your own thoughts. If a thought grows hot or restless, you can breathe with it until it cools, like a planet that gradually redistributes heat from noon to night through 1,000 winds. When you allow yourself to accept uncertainty as a companion rather than a threat, the mind finds a quiet, reliable pace. The cosmos does not insist that every question be solved. It invites you to rest with the question itself, to drift with the curiosity rather than resisting it. Along this path, you meet one more gentle image, the possibility that many of these worlds have atmospheres, layers of gas that catch light in strange and soothing ways. The idea of cloud decks turning the stars' glare into a soft aurora around a night sky is enough to bring a deep, slow smile to your lips. You can feel the air as a metaphor, the way a distant planet's atmosphere can whisper of rain or storms or haze, the way it can cradle warmth and hold breath like a mother cradling a sleeping child. The sense of atmosphere becomes a reminder of your own internal weather. Sometimes light shines through a cloud, sometimes it is muffled by a heavier layer, and still you can rest, because your own inner climate is a well-charted sea of rhythm, tides, and stillness. As you allow these threads to braid together, you realize there are 6 quiet impressions that stand out, not as facts to conquer, but as contemplations to dwell within. The universe is full of exoplanets of every imaginable kind, a panorama of diversity that mirrors the range of human moods. Some worlds glow under blistering heat. Others drift in a gentle balance that feels almost domesticated, a planetary lullaby that invites stillness. A hot Jupiter shows us how heat and wind can craft a weather system so dramatic that even the concept of day and night becomes a poetic metaphor. The planet's atmosphere behaves like a living sculpture, patterns born from the collision of gravity, rotation, and the star's hot breath. Habitable zones remind you to hold nuance with care. Being in the right place is only the foreword to a much longer sentence about atmosphere, water, magnetic shields, and climate stability, the thing that could shape life's quiet emergence. Many worlds we study are not simply Earth-like in size. They are bigger, heavier, and enigmatic super-Earths and mini-Neptunes that tell us about the spectrum between rock and gas, between solid ground and a cloud-drowned sky. Some extremely close to their stars, lava worlds, may offer glimpses of surfaces molten enough to create rivers of rock under a sky not suitable for our weather, while still revealing the resilience of planetary forms that endure heat beyond our ordinary experience. The methods we use to learn about them, transits, radial velocity, and cunning spectra, are acts of patient listening, quiet rituals of evidence gathering, performed with reverence for the unknown and a steady conviction that slow, careful measurement is a path to real understanding. With each gentle breath, you sink deeper into the calm of this night sky classroom. Your heart slows to the cadence of a distant, friendly metronome, and every inhale feels like the widening of a safe universe inside you. There is plenty of time here for wonder to drift, as if you were a leaf on a well-formed stream that comes from nowhere and carries you to a place of soft landing. The mind, which might have raced toward marvels, decides instead to stroll, to walk slowly along twilight paths where light is a sheltered guest and curiosity is a trusted companion. If you listen to the space between thoughts, you might notice a quiet invitation to a mini-story about a traveler who once stood on a shore of an alien world. The traveler looked up at a sky where the stars' light stretched like a thread, longer than any horizon you have known. The traveler found two things to be true. Light travels with the patience of a lullaby, and heat travels with the stubborn insistence of a tide that never fully leaves the shore. In that imagined moment, the traveler learned to pace breath with the planet's own cadence, the tide of day and the stillness after twilight, so that every step toward discovery felt like a step toward rest. The traveler did not rush to know the answer to everything. Instead, they asked gentle questions and gave themselves permission to listen to the space around them until it sounded like a sigh of relief. You could place a tiny map in your lap, a map not of roads, but of horizons. You lay it flat and trace the edges with your fingertip, letting your nail draw light across a page that does not exist in any library, but exists within the quiet of your breath. On this map you mark new worlds, a world where a planet's mass suggests a core of rock and metal, a world whose atmosphere hides a symphony of clouds, a world so close to its star that the surface wears a constant glow. Each mark is a soft anchor, a reminder that exploration does not demand haste. It asks for patience, for the mind to float, to dissolve any sharpened edge and simply settle into trust that the cosmos is big enough to hold your wonders and your rest. Now, as if the room itself were listening, you sense a gentle permission to drift. You may permit yourself to let go of the need to solve every mystery before you sleep. Let your curiosity melt into a lullaby of cadence, a rhythm that marries inquiry with repose. The external drama of discovery, the long exhale of distant light, the slow dance of planets around their stars, becomes, in your private theater, a counterbalance to daily urgency. It is possible to care deeply about what lies beyond, and still permit the room to become quiet, the bed to cradle your body, and your thoughts to settle like sediment in a calm lake. Consider how this practice might translate into daily life. When you walk outside or lie beneath a blanket of stars on a clear night, you can borrow the same patient attentiveness you bring to the exoplanet stories. You can notice the way the air feels between your fingers, the way the room's temperature eases from a bright, responsive heat to a softer, slower glow. You can let your mind practice that same balance. Curiosity without strain, wonder without pressure, hope without a demand for outcomes. Sleep, at its core, is a retreat into a good question, one whose answer is rest, not a final verdict. As you continue to listen, the quiet horizon teaches a softer discipline. You do not have to own every fact to enjoy the beauty of knowledge. The facts we shared, diverse exoplanets, the wind-burnished climates of hot Jupiters, the pondering spaces of habitable zones, the prevalence of super-Earths and mini-Neptunes, the mystery of lava worlds, and the patient art of discovery are not trophies. They are companions you can hold loosely, like a seashell whose color shifts with the angle of the light. You turn that shell in your hand, hear the faint night song of the ocean in it, and you know you are safe. The night grows more private as you drift. The world of distant planets remains at a respectful remove, a faint but persistent halo on the edge of vision. Yet there is something intimate about that distance. It invites you to a brand of closeness that is not about proximity, but about attention. When you pay attention to the quiet, you discover that your own inner climate resembles a calm planet in an uncharted system. It can hold a steady breath. It can weather a minor storm. It can rotate gently towards sleep and let the day fade away with grace. You are listening to a universe that is patient enough to wait for your harboring, quiet enough to let your thoughts settle, large enough to hold you as you rest. The stars outside your window and the stars inside your mind glow with the same soft invitation to rest, to listen, to dream of horizons that glow not with triumph, but with a serene, almost tender possibility. The calm of space, its light, its heat, its endless, patient distance, does not demand you become indifferent. It asks only that you become more present, present to your breath, present to your posture, present to the small, intimate sensations that can travel with you from wakefulness into sleep. In this shared quiet, the world's wonders do not overwhelm you. They accompany you like a lullaby sung by the universe itself. You settle further, as if your body is sand in a quiet hourglass, letting gravity pull gently towards stillness. The thoughts that rose like bright motes in your awareness drift outward, dissolved, carried away by a quiet stream of breath. You notice how the room grows quieter, how the mind's weather calms into a pale, steady glow. There is a small, approving sigh at the edge of your memory, the sigh of space itself, a cosmic exhale that says, "You have done well to listen, you have done well to rest." When you wake, perhaps tomorrow or the next time you drift back here, you may not remember every detail of the exoplanets, names, distances, masses, atmospheres. But what you will remember is the feeling that you carried into sleep. That light, heat, and quiet horizons can accompany you through the night. That curiosity can be a gentler guide than urgency, that the universe can be yours not as a conquest, but as a companion. And in that companionship, you drift more easily toward the day that awaits you, more willing to greet it with a body that has learned the language of rest. You exhale, and the room folds into a velvet stillness. The universe, with its endless curiosities and patient methods, remains as a distant chorus that you can listen to at any time, when your eyes close, when your mind wanders, when your breath slows to a whisper. The quiet horizon holds you softly, holds you still, holds you as you become, for a little while, a small, quiet planet yourself. The kind of planet that knows the tenderness of a calm night and the hope of dawn when the sleep dissolves into morning light. Imagine a world far from our sun, a world that never sees a late evening sunset the way we know it. Many exoplanets journey around their stars in such a way that one face is endlessly bathed in daylight while the other lies in brutal cold. The fancy term is tides and rotation, but what it feels like is this: a day that never ends, a night that never begins. The dayside blazes with heat so intense that the air can crackle with energy, while the nightside sinks into shadow so deep you could slip into it and feel your heartbeat slow to match the planet's own quiet. You might wonder, what would your skin feel on a world like that? Perhaps the answer is a steady, patient heat that winds its way through you, then a cooling breath as you turn away from the glare and let the day's memory dissolve, like steam on a mirror. Do you sense the balance that winds may try to strike? The great, slow compromise between burning noon and the hush of midnight? And if you listen closely, you might hear the planet's breath, a wind that swirls the air in colossal ribbons, attempting to even out the temperature across continents of silence. There is a truth tucked into this quiet. The climate of an exoplanet is not simply hot or cold. It is a conversation between light and darkness, between the stars' steady patience and the planet's own moods. The first fact we breathe in here is this quiet diversity. Many worlds do not have a uniform climate. Instead, they tell a tale of extreme day and night, with winds that travel faster than the eye can see, bending and weaving across the globe. If you were to stroll along the Terminator, the line that divides day from night, you would feel the wind as a soft, relentless ripple, a whisper moving through the air like a breath from a sleeping giant. And you would learn to tailor your sleep to this planet's tempo, letting the hiss of the wind become a metronome that keeps your thoughts from wandering too far. In such places, warmth does not arrive evenly. It arrives in pulses, in gusts that carry a ring of heat from the sunlit side toward the shadowed edge. The atmosphere acts not as a barrier, but as a patient conductor, guiding heat along paths you cannot see, until the world exhales and the pressure of the night settles in. Now let us take a breath and drift to the second truth, the sense of atmosphere itself. Exoplanets wear their skies like cloaks, thick, thin, hazy, or crystal clear, and those skies tell us stories by what they scatter and what they obscure. We know from shimmering light that travels across light years that some exoplanets show signs of water vapor in their layers of gas, a whisper of oceans or rain somewhere beyond the horizon of our instrumentation. You can imagine that faint scent of damp air upon a peaceful morning, even as you float here in your own room, the body a quiet island resting through the hours. The presence of such vapors tells us weather is not merely a theoretical idea, but a living thing, clouds that drift, hazes that veil, breezes that tug at clouds and mountains of gas with gentle, enduring hands. And as you listen, you may become aware of a small, almost mischievous question rising in you. Could there be a world where water is not a blue sea, but a vaporous veil, thinning and thickening with the planet's pulse? What would it feel to stand beneath such a sky, where the air itself carries the memory of rain you have never tasted and perhaps never will? The answer, in present tense, is a soft yes. The atmosphere can cradle water in its molecules, in its rain and mists, in fog that glows faintly at the limb of the planet as the star's light slips through. A third truth drifts into the room, and it sparkles with a slightly wilder edge. On some scorching exoplanets, the weather turns toward the miraculous or the improbable, rock in the air, or rain that is not water but something finer and more extraordinary. The science imagines silicate rain on certain ultra-hot planets, where rocks vaporize at incredible temperatures and condense into glass-like droplets that tumble through the atmosphere as if the world itself were weaving a stained glass sky. Think of it as liquid light, a rain of tiny mirrors or beads that reflect the star's glow and scatter it in faraway corners of space. It is a reminder that climate is not simply heat and cold. It is color, texture, and light obeying rules that lie beyond ordinary experience. You do not need to see these visions to sense their presence. You can feel their poetry, the idea that a world might shed rain made of sand, or glass, or fiery vapor, and that this rain would fall not on dry ground, but through air that holds dunes of heat and a wind that reshapes them. If your breath slows and the room grows quiet, You can almost hear the soft clink of glass droplets falling on a planetary shoreline, a sound the mind can cradle and then release as it drifts closer to sleep. Let us slow the pace a moment and turn toward the fourth truth, which concerns the possibility of temperate havens. Not every world is a furnace, not every place is a furnace's rival. A long way from the star's direct blaze, there are exoplanets that sit within what scientists call the habitable zone, the region where temperatures might permit liquid water to exist on the surface, given the right atmospheric pressure. It is tempting to think of a world like that as a gentler dream, the place where a shoreline might hold a quiet pool, where a breeze would be just warm enough to remind you of a hand on your arm in a soft sigh. Yet even in these temperate climates, you must not mistake gentleness for uniformity. The climate in such a zone can still be a patient teacher, offering days where the sun's arc warms the land and nights where the air forgets its heat, cooling to a forgiving hush. The truth you hold gently here is that balance is a careful art. The planet's climate might tilt toward mild days, but the weather still moves with intention, the atmosphere tracing loops and swirls that keep the surface from becoming too hot or too cold for comfort. And you, listening in your bed, can practice the same balance, allowing your thoughts to settle and your breath to keep its own even tempo as you drift toward deeper rest. Now breathe in again and let the fifth truth come softly forward. Some worlds do not need a star to shine on them for warmth to linger. They are rogue planets floating through interstellar space, free of a sun's constant gaze. They carry their own internal heat, gravitational warmth, slow cooling from a youthful, molten heart, a compost of friction and time. In such a world, daylight is not a bright event but a memory, and night is not a fear but a quiet, enveloping embrace. The temperature may be cooler on the surface, yet the internal heat answers a gentle call from beneath, keeping a dull glow that can be felt in the bones of the planet. You can imagine walking under a sky where the stars feel less like distant constraints and more like patient neighbors who whisper through the walls of atmosphere that it is safe to rest. The body can learn from this. Even when the starry lamp is absent, there is a warmth inside you, an inner sun that glows when you choose to soften. The mind, too, learns to relax its own solar obligations, to let go of the urge to illuminate every corner and instead to sit with the soft radiance already present. A sixth thread wraps around us, speaking of the climate's mood as shaped by the star's temperament and the planet's own reflections. The color of a world's weather, the brightness of its days, and how its winds race across the sky are all influenced by albedo, the way a planet's surface and clouds reflect light back into space. On some exoplanets, luminous, thick clouds can light the nights with a pale, silver glow, diffusing the star's warmth in quiet, diffuse halos. On others, a dark ocean or a dense atmosphere might swallow much of the star's light, keeping temperatures more even or perhaps cultivating longer, slower evenings. You can sense this as you breathe. The room feels differently depending on how the world might reflect the sun's rays, and you, in turn, feel yourself reflecting the room's own calm back into the night. The imagination becomes a gentle telescope, not to pry into the world's locked secrets, but to invite your own senses to rest more deeply, to settle into a pace that matches the patient universe's tempo. As we drift, a small chorus quietly joins, the near-silent choir of the minds that study these distant places. They listen to light that has traveled for years, decoding minute shifts in color, intensity, and timing. And what do they learn, these gentle listeners? They learn to recognize patterns of climate that reveal not only how hot a world can become or how cold it can be, but how weather behaves when scaled up to cosmic distances. The science whispers in a soothing, practical voice. Weather systems on distant worlds can be enormous, sweeping across millions of kilometers, reshaping entire continents of air with storms that endure for days or months as we measure them. You might pause here, allowing the thought to window into your mind the way a ship opens its sails to a calm wind. Can you feel your own thoughts settle into that same rhythm? The slow, patient movement of a calm mind riding a cloud of not quite sleep but not quite awake. A place where the edges are soft and the center is a stable, warm glow. And so we return to the core of our temperature tale, the invitation to rest with a sense of wonder that does not demand action but offers companionship. It is a place where questions become gentle prompts rather than urgent commands. If you listen, you may hear the universe asking you not to solve its mysteries, but to linger with them a little longer. What would it be like to share a night with a world that knows both heat and hush? What would it be like to walk the line between the sunlit hemisphere and the shadowed one, letting the wind free your thoughts just long enough to remind you that you are part of a larger weather system, a living breath within a vast cosmic chest? In this quiet, you are safe to answer in your own terms, by letting go of planning or worrying and simply allowing the body to rest into a deeper, slower breathing. We have spoken of 6 ideas, 6 quiet facets of exoplanetary climates, woven not as a lecture, but as a soft, private wind in a sleeping room. The first, the dramatic and divided dayside and nightside. The second, the veil and clarity of atmospheres that carry water vapor in their mist. The third, the glassy rain and other rainbows of exotic chemistry in scorching skies. The fourth, the possibility, though not guarantee, of mild, ocean-bearing worlds in the habitable zone. The fifth, the soothing paradox of rogue planets kept warm by their own hearts. And the sixth, the way albedo and star temperament sculpt the daily glow of these distant skies. Each thread is a thread of temperature, but together they form a tapestry of light and breath, a map not of places to go, but of sensations to feel. Now, as you continue to drift, picture a shoreline on a distant exoplanet, the kind you would never visit, yet you can imagine. The water might be a different color, pearlescent under a twin glow of star and sky. The air would carry the memory of weather that is both strange and familiar. The faint tang of something briny, the soft hiss of wind sliding across a landscape that is not ours, but somehow feels like home when you listen closely. You might lie on the sand that hums with heat and listen to the planet exhale, a long, slow sigh that blends with your own exhale. In that moment, you are not a traveler in a far-off system, but a listener in the stillness, a soul tucked into a quiet bed where the universe's temperatures are not numbers on a screen, but a living, breathing lullaby. Do you feel it, the sense of acceptance, the permission to rest as the world rests, the sense that the cosmos itself is a patient teacher offering you a refuge in the night? If a single question can serve as a candle in the wind, let it be this. What if comfort on such distant worlds is less about finding perfect conditions and more about learning the art of yielding to time, the time it takes for heat to travel across a planet's air, the time it takes for a mind to settle, the time it takes for a thought to dissolve and become nothing more than a soft echo in the body. You have permission to let go, to let the nervous energy drift away like a leaf in a calm current. The climate stories of far worlds are not here to intrude on your sleep, but to cradle you, to remind you that variety exists even in the quietest places, that even the most extreme winds and the most delicate vapors can exist without demanding your attention. They can wait, like distant bells, until you are ready to listen again. And when you are ready to rise again, gently, at your own pace, the world will still be there, a chorus of distant skies ready to speak in whispers, ready to remind you that temperature is not simply a measure of heat and cold, but a language of wonder, soft, patient, and forever inviting you to drift, to settle, to dissolve into the night and awaken softly, carried by the memory of far-off climates, as if cradled by a calm, universal tide. Breathe in with the exhale of a distant storm and let the exoplanet beneath your closed eyelids unfold its lungs for you. The air around you is not empty. It is a patient, listening current, a whispering sea of gas that has learned the art of gentle motion. It settles around the landscape of a world you may never visit, yet you can sense its soft gravity, its slow, hypnotic drift. The atmosphere here does not hurry, it glides. It glides, and in that glide there is a kind of mercy, the mercy of weather that has learned to share heat and shade, day and night, with a quiet, unspoken pact. You drift toward a coastline that exists only as a map in your mind, where the wind over a distant sea keeps a secret you are invited to hear. The planet you imagine, or perhaps you are already there, listening, holds a remarkable rhythm. It is a rhythm written not in footsteps, but in the language of air, in the rise and fall of pressure, in the rise and fall of cloud, in the slow march of temperature as day becomes night and night becomes day again. And as you float, you notice a soft, almost inaudible rustle, the sound of air curving around a globe, as if the whole world is a conch shell into which the wind speaks in its own patient dialect. Consider the first quiet fact that threads through this sleeping sky. Many exoplanets of the kind that crowd close to their stars are tidally locked. One side forever basks in daylight, the other side lies in perpetual night. It is not a harsh, divided world, but a landscape where heat cannot simply sit still. It must move. The day side warms the air to a bright fever, the night side invites the air to cool and settle. And so the wind becomes a bridge, a delicate belt of motion that carries warmth from the sunlit cusp to the shadowed coast. If you are listening with your whole body, you can feel the gentle interview between heat and cold. Heat says, "Stay with me," and cold replies, "I will be patient, I will come to you." The wind becomes the negotiator, and your breath becomes part of the treaty. Would you like to walk with the wind across this world's skin? You might, if you were to drift along the Terminator, the line where day dissolves into night, where light and darkness hold hands for a heartbeat. The atmospheric response to immersion in that boundary is a kind of quiet poetry. Daylight warms the upper layers of gas. The warmth ascends, and then, as the air cools at higher altitudes, it lowers again, massaging the sky with slow, expansive currents. The wind here is not a gale. It is a patient gardener redistributing warmth so that both sides of the planet can share in the same climate's gentle lullaby. This is the first remarkable fact. Heat is redistributed by winds that do not hurry, but rather insist on balance, a balance that allows the planet to breathe evenly. And now another thread slips into your awareness, a second fact that some worlds reveal when you listen long enough. Picture a globe that spins with a cadence very different from our own. The planet's rotation helps shape its winds into broad patterns, sometimes forming belt-like circuits and towering jet streams. On a world where rotation is moderate, you might imagine a few wide cells of rising air around the equator and sinking air toward mid-latitudes, patterns that lift clouds and carry moisture from equatorial waters toward cooler shoulders. On faster spinning planets, the Coriolis effect, the invisible hand that nudges moving air to veer to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the south, gives rise to more complex jets. The winds do not simply go north or south. They spiral, they braid, they become a weather-stitched tapestry across the globe. If you lie softly enough with the planet's breath, you can sense how a quicker spin can turn a quiet breath into a chorus of winds, 1,000 tiny lines of weather erasing the boundary between one side of the world and the other. Would you trust a map drawn by wind when you are a passenger on a planet's breath? If you close your eyes and listen, you can hear a subtle, perpetual murmur under those winds, the sound of air slipping past mountains and sea, the gentle hiss of clouds skimmed along the surface by a patient current. This is the second fact. The slow, dependable pacing of the global circulation can create multiple, subtle climactic regions, with wind-driven transport linking oceans of atmosphere across continents of sky. The world wears its weather not as a tantrum, but as a melody, a tune that your own breathing can join. In this sea of air, momentum flows in waves, and sometimes a great jet stream wraps itself around the planet like a ring, guiding heat to places that need it most, smoothing some of the rough edges of a world's climate. But there is more to that song, a third whisper that arrives with the certainty of the tide. On many hot exoplanets, particularly those with intense dayside heating, a phenomenon called superrotation occurs. The atmosphere itself can rotate faster than the surface of the planet. It's as if the winds have learned to hum a single, rising note that travels around the globe, long before the ground beneath has had time to catch up. The hottest region, the point on the planet where the sun's glow lingers most intensely, often drifts eastward, a gentle lag that tells you heat is being carried along by a vast, continuous current. You can sense the sensation of heat moving through the air, not standing still where the sun beats most directly, but riding on a fluid river that travels with a patient, almost tender speed. The hot spot travels a little ahead of the substellar point, and the tides and turns of the atmosphere settle into a predictable, if alien, choreography. It is not chaos. It is intelligent motion, a kind of winded grace that invites you to settle, to listen, to feel heat travel across the world like a soft-spoken confidant. Would you follow the eastward drift of warmth if you could ride the air itself? Imagine leaning back into a wind that carries you not toward a horizon, but toward a memory of heat, an echo of your own warmth, refracted and reimagined by alien air. The third fact invites you to imagine that warmth's journey, to witness its teasing approach to the day side and its patient arrival on the night side. The wind's massage of heat is a lullaby for the planet, one that helps the air dissolve extremes and turn a ferocious, daylit glare into a more even, soothing warmth. It is not simply a trick of weather. It is a system, a living mechanism that invites you to trust in the air's steady hand. Would you like to listen for the music of these clouds, to hear what they tell you about the wind's intent? You may hear a gentle rustle first, a hush as clouds gather and then drift apart, a lullaby of rain and shimmer that wafts across your imagined sky. The fifth fact is that winds can sculpt enveloping mysteries by interacting with clouds and atmospheric chemistry. The color of a sunset, the sheen of a morning haze, the way a planet's atmosphere appears more reflective or more transparent. All of these are tuned by the wind's patient hand. Clouds can transport chemical fingerprints across the globe, carrying illusions of rain or shielding the planet from too much heat, or letting a few bright photons slip through to illuminate the night. In this gentle world, the weather is not merely a scene in the sky. It is a translator, turning heat into visible color, turning air into sensation. Beyond the clouds, a subtle, almost magnetic influence emerges as a sixth fact, a whisper about wind and electricity. In the hottest exoplanets, the air can become ionized, a state in which the gas becomes a conductor, and the winds can feel a magnetic influence, an invisible hand guiding the flow, damping the fiercest gusts, and shaping the wind's route through the atmosphere. This magnetic drag, sometimes called ohmic drag in the science that studies these worlds, can slow down the most energetic winds, changing how heat is distributed and how wind patterns settle into their nightly lullabies. It is not a punishment, but a moderation, a way for the atmosphere to breathe not with reckless ardor, but with mindful, measured rhythm. If you listen closely, you might hear the wind sigh, as if acknowledging the balancing force of the planet's own magnetic heart. The wind's voice becomes softer, more velvety, and you feel yourself melting into that softened breath. Would you allow yourself to feel the wind yielding to a hidden magnetism, as if two old friends were guiding the air together toward a gentler passage? Imagine a wind that could slice through heat with a magnetic gleam, not violently, but with a patient echo. The space between the air and the unseen field hums with a quiet resonance, a reminder that even in the most extreme climates, there is a governance, a quiet order to the swirling that keeps a form of equilibrium possible. The night does not swallow the day all at once. Instead, it lessens the day's heat with the day's dropping pace, helped along by winds that know how to pace themselves. But you do not need to memorize equations or memorize a map of circulation cells to sense these tailies. The world narrates itself in small, intimate ways. The wind is a storyteller who leans toward you and speaks in a whisper, a language built from rhythm and temperature and distance. If you lean in, you might feel the wind tell you a story of distant seas, oceans of gas so vast that their surface tension never truly rests, worlds where the sky itself is a floating ocean, a perpetual mist, a breathing cathedral of air. In the wind's voice, there is a patient invitation to drift, to float, to settle, to dissolve into the moment, to be carried along by a current that makes time feel longer, gentler, more forgiving. Let me offer you a few visions that thread through this wandering talk of exoplanetary wind. Picture a solitary lighthouse on a shore that exists only in memory, the beams sweeping across the deep, and the wind weaving patterns of fog around the tower. As you listen to that lamp's quiet rotation, you sense a real map of heat and wind drawn across the planet's surface. The lighthouse's light is analogous to the starlight we see in the distance, the phase curve of a distant world that rises and falls with its own cadence. The wind, in its own patient way, guides that light across the planet's face, translating heat into glow and glow back into warmth for a world that depends upon these rhythms to soften extremes. The wind is not a mere traveler. It is a caretaker, allowing a climate to endure the daylight's burn and the night's chill, to soften the sharp edges of a world that otherwise might fear the cold. Would you like to drift within that lighthouse's beam, to watch the fog swirl outward as the air carries heat away from the bright side and toward the cooler night? It is a small, intimate scene that tells you a lot about the machine of weather. The terminus of heat becomes a gentle horizon where wind and light meet. And as you lean toward this horizon, you begin to understand that the real comfort of these distant worlds is not in the absence of storms, but in their patient, orchestrated harmony. The winds do not rage to prove strength. They cooperate to keep the climate in a state of delicate balance. They teach you to breathe slowly, to let your thoughts dissolve like mist, to settle into the quiet aftermath of a gust rather than bracing against its force. Would you permit your thoughts to rest here, in the space where wind and weather become a bedtime story? Let your mind fall into a softer, longer breath and listen to the exoplanet's air. It speaks in a language of gentle acceleration and slow retreat, of air that gathers near the equator and then slowly leaks toward higher latitudes, of storms that drift across the sky like ships guided by currents rather than sails. The atmosphere on these planets is not a storm world only. It is a world of rhythm and restraint, a place where even the wildest winds obey the quiet rules of heat redistribution and wind-driven shading. It is a place where science and sleep intertwine, where research on the way winds move can become a lullaby rather than a lecture, where a deep sense of awe can be woven into a soft fragrance of calm. And there, in the distance of your imagination, you sense another truth: the way scientists study these winds. They use models that simulate three-dimensional atmospheric motion, watching how air rises at the equator, how it travels toward the poles, and how it sinks again in a slow, reassuring cadence. They track how different planets, with their own rotation speeds, develop different wind patterns, how some worlds host a handful of broad circulation cells, while others display a network of jet streams and giant storms. They also observe that winds are not uniform across the globe. They are born and aged by the planet's own features: the gravity that holds air near the surface, the stars' warmth warming the dayside, the cold of night cooling the night side, the presence of oceans, the chemistry of the atmosphere, and sometimes the planet's magnetic field. These are the quiet, careful, and endlessly patient ideas that the wind carries, like seeds that drift on a summer breeze until they find a place to settle. Would you prefer to listen to these ideas as something you can camp beside, like a soft campfire on an alien shore? The invitation you accept is to let go of the urge to understand everything at once, and instead cradle a few small, enduring truths. These winds are not just something to be described. They are something to be felt. Their speed, their direction, the color of the sky they carry, the hush that follows when the winds wane a little. The atmosphere breathes in a manner that reveals a universe still generous with patience, and in that generosity you can learn to slow your own breath and invite a gentler pace. If you are listening still, you might hear yourself asking a simple question. What does it feel like to live with winds that travel around the world in a single night? What would a day look like if heat moved around the globe faster than your own heart could follow? Would a landscape of exoplanet weather feel more forgiving than the storms we know, or would it simply be different? A wider, quieter drama in which the air itself becomes a constant companion. The answer, like the wind, is not a single shape. It is a spectrum of possible feelings and possibilities, all united by the shared truth that wind is warmth's best ally and the planet's most steady friend. Let us drift toward a restful close by returning to the sense of calm that underlies all this wandering air. On this distant world, winds are not a threat to sleep, but a guarantee of balance. The atmosphere, in its infinite patience, helps spread heat across the globe, so the nights are not an endless frost and the days are not a burning furnace. Clouds travel across the sky as if they too were keeping time with a slow, soft heartbeat. And though the world may be far from our own, the art of weather here is not a mystery to those who listen with quiet minds. It invites you to slow down, to allow heat and light to be distributed with grace, to surrender to a rhythm that you can trust. Would you like to rest now in the cradle of this wind's embrace, letting the planet's breath steady your own? Your body can follow the lullaby of the atmosphere, a longer inhale, a slightly longer exhale, a settling into a familiar pattern of calm, as if your muscles were pillows on the sea, soft and yielding. The winds over a distant sea, over the exoplanet's sky, continue to speak, but their words become softer as you sink deeper into sleep. They remind you that even in the vastness of space, there is an order that brings comfort, heat that travels to ease the cold, air that moves to balance, clouds that veil and reveal in turns, currents that spin but never break the quiet. You carry this knowledge with you as you drift, a gentle map etched not on paper but in your own breath. And if you should awaken later to the memory of a wind on a far-off world, remember it as you would remember a lullaby heard in a childhood bedroom long ago. The wind's patient science, the soft, almost invisible mathematics of air and heat, the quiet drama of a global circulation that tends to create a climate of peace rather than a storm of fear. The exoplanet's atmosphere, with its winds, its clouds, its rotations, its magnetic moods, is a grand conductor of calm. It is a science that helps us sleep, a tale that helps us breathe in a longer, truer way, drift and settle, and dissolve into the knowledge that the universe, even in its most distant, alien corners, knows how to hold us gently in its weathered hands. As night folds over the world you imagine, you feel the last notes of the wind's lullaby drift through your senses. The whisper of air curling around the planet, the soft shimmer of cloud edges catching starlight, the impression of heat traveling a slow path from day to night. You are not merely a listener, you are a part of this world's breath, a quiet traveler on the edge of the ice-flecked seas of space, a guest in a chamber where wind and wonder breathe in unison. You have learned 6, perhaps more truths about exoplanet winds, about how their atmospheres behave, how heat travels, how clouds rise, how magnetic fields touch the air, how rotation sculpts the sky. Yet for now, you simply listen, and in listening you drift toward the deepest sleep you've earned. A calm that settles like a soft snowfall on a distant, sleeping world. Let us begin with a soft fact, tucked into the folds of time like a fragile coin. A ringed planet is not simply a planet with a ring. It is a world that has learned to share its light with a delicate halo of debris, a disk of ice and rock that dances around it in a plane as precise as a drawing compass. You can imagine it as a cosmic carousel, where countless particles twirl in almost perfect harmony, forming a luminous band that glitters against the dark. This is not loud science, but a quiet portrait. A ring system remains visible because the particles reflect starlight, catching your eye with a whisper rather than a shout. You may picture your favorite night sky, not a single orb, but a gentle chain of gleaming beads circling a distant world. The first fact, if you are open to it, is that rings are not permanent fixtures carved into the cosmos. They are white-silver breath, a fleeting chorus of dust and ice that can endure for millions of years when cared for by gravity and time. And you may relax as you hear that truth settle into your shoulders, like a light shawl laid over your chest. A second truth, requested not with force but with kindness, concerns the guardians of these rings, shepherd moons. In the orchestra of a ringed planet, there are moons that act like caretakers, nudging the ring particles into lanes and gaps, holding them in place with a patient, almost invisible touch. You can breathe with that idea, the idea that a moon, modest in its motion, can sculpt the architecture of a ring, carving clear paths where particles gather and clear away where they do not. Picture a halo that has ripples along its edge, a shoreline rendered in ice. The gaps, the waves, the bright rings themselves, these are not chaos but a choreography, each particle following a prescription of gravity that has softened into art. If you listen closely, you may hear the hush of those shepherds at work, a serene cadence that says, "Stay, but drift in your own time." It is a gentle reminder that order can be formed without harshness, simply by the patient pull of unseen hands. Now you are ready to hear another whisper, an invitation to touch, to feel, to notice. The three-dimensional geometry of a ringed planet is more than line and circle. It is texture and color and shadow. The rings cast shadows upon the planet's days and nights, and the planet's tilt allows those shadows to drift across the surface like a soft, slow tide. If you imagine walking along a shore while the moon climbs into the horizon, you would sense how the light changes with the angle of approach. In a real world far beyond our own, the tilt of a planet's axis and the tilt of its rings can blend into a seasonal drama. Sometimes a ring plane offers a cool shade that cools the world below. At other times, it allows bright rays to filter through a thin veil, painting the nights with pale, pearly bands. The third fact, carried like a delicate lullaby, is that geometry can be a gardener of climate. The way rings tilt and cast shadow upon moons and atmospheres can subtly influence day lengths, starlight exposure, and even the mood of a world's winds. You may let this thought coast through you, a soft, steady boat gliding across a tranquil bay. If you are listening, you might notice the fourth gentle note in this symphony. Some exoplanets do indeed wear rings, and the evidence we have so far is as patient as a snowfall. The signals are not as loud as thunder, They are more like a soft brush against a telescope's lens, a delicate signature in a transit light curve that hints at a ringed embrace around a distant world. You can permit the mind to rest on this idea. Rings in distant systems, while not yet as common as the rings we know in our own solar neighborhood, are plausible and beckon with their serene geometry. It is not a loud proclamation, but a soft invitation to imagination. The cosmos invites you to believe that ringed worlds are not only possible, but beautiful, and you may accept that beauty as a form of knowledge that rests lightly upon the chest. A fifth gentle note arrives in the form of texture, the texture of the rings themselves. They are not a single sheet, but a disk with a spectrum of particle sizes, from glimmering ice grains to small fragments of rock. Some parts might look like powdered sugar, while others appear as coarse confetti, and a few bright specks shine with crystalline clarity. The reflectivity of the ring depends on particle size, composition, and the angle of light. You might say that the rings are like a dusted veil, a veil that can shimmer differently with every tilt of the star's gaze. There is a tenderness in this fact. The ring's light changes with the observer's perspective, just as a memory can glow differently when told from a new vantage point. You may permit yourself to listen to that memory physics and feel the ring's glow wash over you, soft as moonlit snow. Now, I will invite you to a small cinematic moment, a mini story that lives inside the larger story of ringed stillness. A lone explorer, a quiet traveler of the night, drifts in a small vessel through the outer reaches of a ringed world. The ship's hull holds a story of years, not days, windows fog with the warmth of a human heart, not the chill of a machine. The traveler does not rush. There is time to watch a ring's edge catch a fragment of starlight and hold it there, as if 1,000 frozen flowers were pressed between the world and the sky. As the traveler glides, the rings sing with a soft resonance that the heart can hear if it listens with the breath. The ship passes through a gap carved by a shepherd moon, and the traveler feels a careful silence, a space where even sound seems to melt into the glow of ice and dust. You may ride with that traveler for a moment, letting the ship drift along the ringed plain, feeling the quiet of the cosmos settle into your bones. When the traveler looks outward again, the rings are no longer just a line around a planet. They become a narrative of patience, a geometry that has been written by gravity and time, line by line, circle by circle, in a script that asks for nothing but quiet attention. As you breathe with that scene, another fact threads its way into the dreamlike fabric. The rings' gravitational influence can extend beyond themselves, shaping subtle tides in the planet's air and in the path of nearby moons. In some worlds, the rings create gentle waves in the atmosphere of the planet's moons, and in turn, those moons catch the light in a way that can seem almost ceremonial. It is not a loud effect. It is more like a sigh, a series of small, almost inaudible pushes and pulls that keep everything in a patient, measured equilibrium. You may acknowledge this influence as a part of your own sense of balance, the sense that small, consistent forces, when given time, can gently rearrange the surface of a life, the way a soft wind can sculpt a dune or a shoreline. Let the metaphor drift through you, settling like a feather on a calm lake. Now, let us circle back to the human sense of wonder with a sixth gentle fact, a soft beacon about observation and the mind. Exoplanet rings are discovered not only by their light, but by how they modulate it over time. When a planet passes in front of its star, the rings can dim the star's glow in a way that leaves a trace, an afterimage, a map of their presence. It is a delicate detection, a cautionary whisper to the observer's eye that says, "Look again, listen again, be patient." The light curve's subtle bumps can tell the story of ring material, of gaps and densities, of how the ring's edge holds in place against the pull of gravity. You may imagine these signals as tiny footprints in the snow, each one showing where the wind has touched the ground, guiding the sleigh of discovery along a soft, unhurried route. There is a calming comfort in knowing that scientists, like careful librarians of the night, read these traces with gentleness, and that every new hint invites a longer, slower question, a quiet experiment in patience. The seventh fact, gentle, not loud, concerns the durability and memory of a ringed world. Rings endure not because they stand still, but because they rotate with a rhythm that can outlast seasons. They can gradually evolve through collisions, resonances, and reshaping by moons, yet they persist as a living outline to the planet's story. You might think of them as a memory of the cosmos, a visible trace of history written in ice and rock. They remind you that a world can bear the weight of time, not with burden but with grace, as though time itself were a soft, flowing river, carrying particles from way back when into the present moment where you stand. You may allow this thought to dissolve into your own sense of being, as if the rings were a lullaby played by the universe, each note a pale, gleaming bead that slides into your heart. I invite you to listen for the next hush, an invitation to perceive the scale of a ringed planet in stillness rather than speed. The ring geometry teaches us a peculiar truth. Scale does not demand urgency. A ring's circumference can be vast, a plaza of ice around a planet, yet the tempo of life on the world below, the winds in the atmosphere, the drift of a cloud, the breath of a distant ocean, can move with gentle pace, almost imperceptible to the eye but real to the atmosphere. If you let this idea settle, you may feel a kind of gravitational patience in your own chest. It is okay to slow down here, to let the mind drift along with the ring's slow halo, to permit your thoughts to settle into a more expansive, more relaxed horizon. Let us weave a few more sensory invitations into this tapestry. Imagine approaching the planet from afar, the rings first catching the light, a delicate halo that glints like frost on a windowpane in the early morning. The ice particles vary in size, and as you edge closer, the light refracts through them, painting the space with soft crescents and pale glows. You may hear the rustle of dust in the ring, as if a distant field of snow is gently being stirred by a winter breeze. You may hear the faint, almost inaudible chorus of microcollisions among particles, a sound that exists only when your ear is calibrated to the hush of space. It is not a sound to wake you, but to cradle you, a sound that says the cosmos is here, and it is quiet enough to listen to. As we continue, another fact slides into the scene, not with urgency, but with a soft accord. The belt-like structures in planetary systems, the belts of asteroids and debris that orbit stars, form a kind of cosmic corridor, a beltway of material that can shape the appearances of rings, moons, and the planet's own path through space. You may imagine the belt as a quiet corridor of possibility, a place where material gathers, not with violence, but with inevitability. The presence of belts can redraft or reinforce the potential for rings to survive or evolve, to feed new material to moonlets, or to dilute into dust that drifts away on a patient, slow journey. You can listen to that idea as you would listen to a language you have long understood but not always heard, the language of patience, the grammar of time, the vocabulary of stillness that only reveals itself when you stop to listen. Take a few more breaths, if you would, and let your body settle deeper into the moment. The room around you dissolves into a larger, more tranquil space, the space of the night sky and the wordless geometry that holds it together. You can sense the pattern, a ringed world, a calm plane, a ring's glow reflected back toward the star. You can perceive the way the ring's edge might shimmer as the planet orbits, a line of light that sometimes brightens, sometimes softens, never rushing, always arriving in its own time. This is the serenity of science, not force, but comprehension achieved through patience and tenderness. You may rest with that sense, letting it seed within you as gently as a seed falling onto fertile soil, awaiting the rain that comes at the right moment. In this stillness, there is a final invitation I offer you. You may hold a small, private practice for the next moments. When you notice a wandering thought, perhaps about a future journey among exoplanets or a memory of a star you once watched from a summer hillside, you may picture the ringed planet nearby and let the thought drift along the ring's plane as if it were a message carried by a slow, shimmering current. Return your attention to the breath. Breathe in and count to 4. Breathe out and count to 6. Let the exhale dissolve into the space around you as if the world itself is releasing a sigh. You have permission to let go of urgency. You have permission to drift. You have permission to listen to the cosmos at the pace of a whisper. If you have a moment, imagine another tiny vignette. A child looking up at a clear night sky, asking, with wide eyes, why rings exist around some worlds. The parent answers softly, not with a lesson, but with a gentle gesture toward the stars, toward the delicate arc of light outlining a ringed halo. The child's breath slows, and the child's heartbeat matches the cadence of a distant, patient universe. You may permit yourself to borrow that simplicity. Sometimes knowledge is the quiet telling of a story, not the loud proclamation of a fact. You may listen to this gentle model and allow your own curiosity to rest, to settle, to drift into its own gentle hour. First, imagine a planet that lies close to its star, a world where the night never truly begins in the same way you know it. Have you noticed how the ocean near your shore slows your own breath, how the air becomes a little thicker as the wind drops into a patient hush? On many exoplanets that orbit close to their suns, this slowing becomes a planet-wide truth. The gravity of the star pulls with a patient insistence, and over long eons, the planet begins to rotate more and more slowly until one face is always toward the star and the other forever toward the far side of space. You might picture that world as a coin that has grown heavy with the weight of gravity, flipping less and less, until its day and night are not 24 hours, but something longer, something that invites you to stretch your own size across hours instead of minutes. In this way, spin itself learns to bow to gravity, and the planet's day length lengthens until the cycles of light and dark drift like a slow current. We will not hurry through this picture. You may hear a soft, rhythmic question in the distance, a question that does not demand an answer, but invites your breath to match its tempo. What does a world feel like when its clock is set by tides? And then, perhaps, you notice that this tidal slowing is not merely a cold mechanism of physics, but a quiet tutor of habit. If a planet spins slowly, the weather responds as if it were listening to a slow, patient song. The Coriolis effect, nature's way of redressing motion into curved pathways, loosens its grip. Jets become gentler, or they shift into broader, slower patterns. The atmosphere learns to spread the heat more evenly, or at least to stretch its reach across longer hours. The day-night contrast softens its teeth into a more even, whispering smile. You may picture the world's air as a vast, slow-moving ocean of wind that glides from dawn to dusk, with a tenderness you could almost swim in. And you may ask yourself, as you settle deeper, whether you too are slowed by your own gravity, the gravity of a long day, a heavy thought, a memory you keep returning to, as if a distant planet's rotation had slipped into your own breathing. Now, as you drift deeper, consider a second serene fact about these tidal worlds. The tide is not only mechanical, it can be thermal, and sometimes it glows with inner heat. On planets with eccentric or elongated orbits, the gravitational pull of the star regularly stretches the planet, bending and compressing its interior. The result is tidal heating, a gentle, ancient friction that warms the planet from inside. It is not a blaze, but a slow, patient glow, like the inner embers of a hearth that never quite goes out. This heating can fuel oceans or hidden seas beneath ice, or it can stir volcanic or pluming activity that keeps the interior in a quiet, sustained conversation with the surface. You can imagine a world where the nights are not perfectly still, but lightly warmed by this invisible hearth. The heat travels outward, smoothing the day and night into a more even rhythm, and you are invited to listen for that steady hum, a kind of cosmic lullaby that says, even in the cold, there is warmth if you learn to listen. Have you ever felt a warmth you could not see? A warmth in the bones that comes from listening to a far-off fire? Permit yourself to sense that warmth here, in this moment, as you breathe in and out with the planet's patient heartbeat. In the same breath, let us speak of a third gentle truth. Not all worlds with tides are locked to a single face. Some exoplanets become what we might call a spin-orbit duet, locked not into a permanent day and night, but into a resonance, like a shy dance where the planet's rotation and its orbital year are aligned in a repeating pattern. Mercury, in our own solar system, is famous for its 3-2 resonance. It makes 3 rotations for every 2 orbits around the Sun. On distant planets, tides can guide the dance towards similar resonant relationships, so that the planet's day length becomes a constant ratio of its year. You may picture this as a careful waltz. The planet turns just enough so that the stars move in a consistent arc across the sky, while the year itself slowly circles. The climate then wears a different crown. It might feel seasons shaped by this cadence, less abrupt than a rigid day-night division, more like a gentle turning of a compass that never quite points in the exact same direction twice. The effect on weather is profound yet soothing. Fewer violent, stark swings, more gradual shifts, as if the world learns to breathe in a rhythm that is neither hurried nor inert. You are invited to rest in this rhythm, to listen to the soft, repeating breath of the planet as it moves through its cycles, wondering if your own heartbeat might someday learn such a patient cadence. A fourth truth comes softly, like a tide rolling under a pier. Even when a planet is tidally locked, there can be life-giving oceans that make their own music, their own tides within the ocean due to the gravitational pull of the star, and perhaps moonlets or satellites that circle the world. The tides on an ocean world are not mere waves. They are the planet's conversation with itself and with the star it orbits. The sun above may set on the same face for a long veil of time, but the ocean holds a moving, singing boundary where liquid meets land or air. When the star's gravity pulls at the ocean, the water bulges outward, not as a storm but as a patient, rolling bump, an almost lullaby-like motion. On some distant shores, you could stand at the edge of a sea and hear a whisper of the cosmos in the cadence of the tide. The water's rise and fall becomes a natural metronome, guiding creatures large and small, shaping ecosystems, and offering a cadence by which life learns to drift and settle in a safer rhythm. You may allow your senses to widen with this image. The shore not as a boundary, but as a place of listening, a place where the planet's gravity cradles the water so that even the smallest creatures learn to float with the current. And then there is a fifth, almost conspiratorially gentle fact. The very slow spin of a tidally influenced world can help the climate find balance, as if the planet were learning to moderate extremes by letting heat spread slowly from the radiant day to the dark night. Picture a world with a vast blanket of atmosphere, perhaps with oceans or bold landmasses or a combination of both. When the planet spins slowly, its equator to pole differences in temperature have more time to soften. The atmosphere can circulate heat in wider, longer loops, carrying whispers of warmth to the far edges of the day. The day side does not burn in a single blaze. The night side does not snuff out in a sudden frost. Instead, the warmth trickles, settles, and sinks into the planet's skin, as if the world is learning to breathe in longer, deeper breaths. You may notice that your own breathing follows a similar pattern when you become quiet enough, breaths long and slow, with pauses that feel almost like small rainfalls of air. Let this memory settle in you. The planet is teaching its own rhythm to the weather, and by extension, to you, to your dreams, and to your longing to drift without hurry. 6. And perhaps the most whispered truth of all is this. Gravity itself is not a tyrant but a nurse, a patient caretaker that governs the tempo of days and the shape of orbits. The gravity of a star is a patient conductor, adjusting the planet's path in the same way a tide adjusts the shoreline. It tugs on the planet's bulges, it tugs on the oceans, it tugs on the living world's atmosphere and seas, guiding them toward a settled, quieter day. The slower the spin, the more the gravity can script a steady lullaby across centuries. The planet does not forget the sun, but it learns to share the sun's quiet brightness with a gentler, more forgiving night. You may find yourself asking a soft question. What is a full day on such a world but a collection of gentle breaths, each breath a moment where the air, the water, and the ground align around the planet's slow heart? And you may permit yourself to answer in your own way, by letting your own breathing settle into that same patient rhythm, letting thoughts drift like clouds across a long, calm sky. Listen again and hear the universe answering you in whispers. Time passes not with a shout, but with a tide. The night does not insist on being conquered. It invites you to settle into its cradle, to become a small boat on a vast, slow ocean. The drift becomes your guide, the float becomes your friend, and the shore of wakefulness dissolves into a horizon that is not far away but gently receding, as if the world itself is bowing to your need to rest. Do you feel it? The sense that the mind, like water, seeks to find its depth, to find its quiet depth where light hardly disturbs the surface. You may choose to sink into that depth for a moment, or you may opt to skim the surface, letting the glow of distant stars flicker on your eyelids as if it were a gentle meteor shower of peace. If you were to imagine a nightly scene on one of these exoplanets, you would see a sky painted with slow, winding aurorae and pale starlight filtered through a thin, cold atmosphere. The tides would moodily lift their silver fingers along the coastline, and you would hear the distant, timeless sound of water meeting land, soft, persistent, almost a whispered lullaby that travels beyond your hearing, a sound that seems to rub your nerves into a velvet calm. You might imagine a shoreline where rocks hum with the faint echo of gravity's embrace, where every wave carries the planet's quiet confession. We are here, we are listening, we are learning to be slow. And if you listen long enough, you might hear your own breath joining the world's breath in a chorus of night, and you would know that to drift is to be exactly where you are meant to be. I invite you to recall, for one more moment, the science that makes this lullaby possible. The tidal locking that binds a planet to its star, the way gravity tugs on bulges and stirs the interior, the subtle dances of spin that determine day length and wind patterns, the warmth born of tidal friction that can cradle oceans and shape climates in the gentlest possible ways. These are not loud facts to shout, but quiet truths, like the slow turning of a seashell to reveal its hidden spiral. You may hear them as if they were soft bells ringing in a distant harbor, each chime a reminder that the universe has a way of slowing down to help its beings listen more deeply. And you may find that you too have learned to slow down, to listen to your own breath, to the rhythm of your own heart, to the soft, timeless push and pull of gravity that holds you in the present moment. Close your eyes and listen to the quiet where distance wears a velvet cloak, where the stars breathe in slow, patient light, and you drift along the edge of a world that glows with an icy blue. The ship you ride is a dream made of calm, a vessel of soft inquiries and gentle voyages. It does not hurry you, it does not hurry itself. It simply follows the pale trail of starlight, allowing you to settle even deeper into the breath that teaches you where peace lives. Tonight you travel to a place we call the Hidden Blues, a realm of ice worlds under soft starlight, where the horizon shivers with a pale radiance, and the quiet is a lullaby that never ends. You may let the world fall away, you may let the thoughts dissolve like frost in a warm hand, you may, if you wish, pretend you are thin air between two bright understands, a question and its answer held in one luminous hush. As you listen, feel the idea slip into your chest as a small, patient thing. There are exoplanets out there with surfaces coated in ice, worlds where every rock wears frost, as if the night itself had whispered a decree to settle in white. These are ice worlds, or water-rich planets, where the outer layers gleam with a crystalline sheen and the core dreams of warmth. You need not know the science to know the sensation that the universe hosts vast seas of frozen glass, and that somewhere beyond the night, a planet could cradle oceans beneath a thick crust of ice. The thought enters your awareness as a soft ripple on a still lake, barely a sound, yet enough to remind you that the cosmos does not hurry to reveal its windows to the sun. It offers you a pain of quiet, a pain you can hold and study with your breathing. And you are allowed to be curious, allowed to let that curiosity drift and then settle like a leaf landing on a still pond and then resting there, untroubled by wind. If you lift your gaze, you may notice the faint, patient glow that travels from the star through the void to kiss the ice world's surface. Some of these distant planets lie far from their suns, where the light is gentle and the temperatures stay thoughtfully low. The soft starlight that graces their skies does not blaze, it glides. It paints the ice with blue lavender glints, turning every ridge into a corridor of quiet reflections. And here is a truth you can breathe in without strain. Such a distance is not a desert of loneliness, but a sanctuary of calm. The climate is slow, the day lengthened into a timeless hour, and you can take your time listening to the wind that sculpts frost into delicate lattices along crater rims. You are allowed to permit the idea that a world can be cool and serene, that a planet can wear a blue radiance like a shawl, and that beauty does not need to be loud to be true. Let your breath become a gentle tide that rises and falls with the pulse of distant ice. Practice a small, soft exercise with your senses. Breathe in, allow the air to touch your tongue and throat. Exhale and notice how your chest settles. While you breathe, consider a simple statement about ice worlds. Beneath their serene surfaces, layers of ice can hide warm, liquid spaces. Let this thought pass through you like a winter breeze that clears a window just enough to reveal the glow beyond. You may allow the idea to drift in, to linger, and then to dissolve as the next breath arrives. The mind does not need to trap it, it only needs to invite it, to offer it a seat at the table of your awareness, and then invite it to melt away if it grows heavy. In this moment, you are permitted to hold a gentle belief that knowledge can be a soft companion, not a loud tutor. Knowledge can lie beside you like a pillow, a cushion for your neurons as they settle into the slow cadence of sleep. If you want a more intimate image, imagine a small skiff gliding across a lake of ice that is so calm you can see the reflection of the stars in its surface as clearly as if they hung above you. You tilt your head and watch a tiny drift of frost travel along the boat's hull, tracing a path that glitters and then fades. In this scene, a fact travels with you, not as a lecture, but as a gentle guide. Some icy exoplanets wear their white coats with pride, their exteriors bright and reflective, their surfaces catching photons and turning them into a quiet radiance that makes the night less dark and more listenable. The reflection you see is not merely light. It is your own breath, mirrored and softened, a sign that you and the world above the ice share a single, tender rhythm. You may let that rhythm cradle your words, letting them slow, letting them become more a hush than a sentence, more a pause than a thought. As you journey deeper, imagine the possibility of movement within these frozen vistas. Ice is not only a surface, it is a platform for quiet processes that endure across centuries. Cryovolcanism, a gentle whisper of activity, may paint the void with pale plumes, water vapor, and perhaps trace amounts of ammonia rising slowly through the ice like a sigh. These plumes are not eruptions of force, but a delicate exhale from a sleeping place in the planet's crust. They drift upward and outward, shaping the ice with their own quiet power, as if the world were aligning itself to the subtle music of gravity, time, and patience. Think of the plumes as a lullaby for the ice world, a soft exhale that decorates the night with faint fog, a reminder that even in stillness there can be motion, there can be a gentle choreography between solid ice and the wisps of vapor that rise before dissolving in the cold air. You are allowed to let this image settle, to let it inhabit your imagination as a friendly rumor from far away that comes and goes, leaving behind a sense of wonder more than an about measure of fact. Another truth of these distant ice worlds is that their surfaces can be extraordinarily bright, almost like a living mirror. The high reflectivity, or albedo, of ice means that the planet can gleam as if the entire world were wearing a soft, frosted halo. This brightness does not shout. It hums, it refracts, it settles into your eyes with a quiet, cooling reassurance. When the ice wears such a cloak, the starlight feels closer, as if you could reach out and touch the light's edge and pull it gently toward you, not to own it, but to borrow its calm for a while longer. Allow yourself to feel the albedo as a sense of balance, a reminder that not all relationships with the cosmos must be fiery or loud. Some are simply bright, listening, patient. In this talk of brightness, you may drift to a more intimate, personal scene. Picture yourself stepping onto a shoreline where the ice meets the sea in a slow, merciful embrace. The water beneath the crust glides along, unseen by most eyes, yet you can sense it through the hush beneath your feet. The planet's internal warmth travels outward, a quiet current that loves its own stubborn resilience. This hidden ocean is a promise you can hold. Life might persist in ways we are only beginning to imagine, tucked away beneath 100 layers of ice, warmed by the planet's own pulse, nurtured by the slow mixing of tides and heat that never rushes, only coaxes. You may permit yourself to dream of such resilience, to feel a kinship with this patient energy, to imagine your own breath becoming a tide, arriving with a gentle swell and receding with a sigh. And if you listen further, a chorus begins to rise, a chorus not of facts shouted from a podium, but of possibilities whispered in the margins of sleep. Some ice worlds might keep a magnetic shield around them, a protective cloak that interacts with the solar wind to create shimmering curtains of light, auroras, that dance across the night sky in soft ribbons of green and blue. The aurora is not a weapon, but a painter's stroke across a velvet universe, a natural art that makes the night glow without glare. Picture the ice world turning slowly, every moment a portrait of quiet motion, every gust of wind, a thread drawn through the fabric of the cold. You are invited to observe this beauty with the same gentleness you apply to your own breath. One breath in, one breath out, steadily, without forcing a meaning or a memory to appear before its time. The curtains of light remind you that even in great distance, there is a sense of closeness, a resonance between your inner calm and the outer cosmos. Now perhaps you notice a particular sensation in your hands, as if you are holding a small, smooth piece of ice that never melts in your palm. The sensation is not a pain, but a memory of the planet's surface temperature, a reminder of the thin line between sleep and wakefulness. In this moment, you may accept a small, honorable truth. There are many kinds of wonder, including those that arrive quietly after the loudness of the day has faded. You do not need to chase excitement here. You only need to allow wonder to drift toward you, like a feather floating on a still current. If you wish, you may name your favorite among the ice world's quiet miracles, the hidden ocean, the reflective ice, the slow dance of auroral light, and then let that name dissolve again into the blue glow of starlight. Your mind will keep the memory like a seashell to your ear, listening for the soft murmur of the sea beneath the ice, listening for the distant heartbeat of a distant world. If you wish, you can let these facts drift away now, or you can tuck them into the folds of your sleep as small, soft souvenirs. You might imagine a map of the night sky, with a tiny, gleaming line pointing to a distant ice world, and then notice how your map folds and settles into your chest as you breathe. Either way, you are free to return to the present moment at your own pace, to keep your inward compass pointed towards serenity. You can tell yourself softly that you are allowed to dream with the cosmos, to dream with the quiet blues of the far freezes of space, to dream with the delicate light of distant stars. You may choose not to chase explanations, but to ride the tide of peace, to let your thoughts drift like snowflakes, and to settled into the deep, untroubled blue of the sleeping sea of space. Close your eyes and let the quiet arrive the way a slow tide arrives at a long, empty shore. The night has a patient heartbeat, a soft drum that never hurries. You sink into the pillow of space, and with each breath you drift a little farther, past the familiar stars, toward a chorus of distant skies that hum in a language made of light and hush. There is a map stretched across the velvet dark, not a map of streets, but a map of possibilities, a gentle constellation of worlds that glimmer with the idea of rain on other continents, winds that never quite reach you here, and oceans that might cradle a memory of rain you've never known. Tonight you wander through transits and tranquility, a tour through distant skies where the clocks tick in a softer cadence and the distances themselves learn to whisper. Take a slow breath and listen to the luminescent stillness of a far-off sun. It glows not with heat alone, but with stories of a planet turning in a quiet orbit, a planet that might feel the pull of tides like a lullaby pulling a child towards sleep. You are asked to settle into stillness, to allow your thoughts to drift like leaves on a lake. And as you breathe, a small, agreeable fact travels toward your awareness, not roaring but resting. There are thousands of exoplanets, worlds beyond our sun circling other stars. Some are small and rocky as a seed of a fruit you've never tasted. Some are gas giants so immense they would swallow your entire sky with their shadow. The exact number changes with each new whisper from space, but the truth remains constant in its gentleness. A vast menagerie of planets, each one a potential doorway, a quiet invitation to imagine what life might say if it learned to speak through a different sun. Now soften your gaze inward and notice how you breathe in. Picture a world that people sometimes imagine in their most tranquil dreams. A planet where the sun sits low on the horizon, where a day lasts long because it is held in a slow, steady orbit. Let the image become a little lullaby. This is one of the many exoplanets, a kind of world that we call a hot Jupiter in scientific whispers, though the term sounds almost like a weathered old book. It describes a gas giant that circles unusually close to its star. Close enough that the gravity of the star slows the planet's rotation in the sea of night, and the tides become a constant, intimate drumbeat. It is not loud, not a shout in a canyon, but a quiet, continuous churn you might feel if you pressed your ear to the earth as it twined itself around the sun. The concept arrives not as a lecture, but as a soft wave, a planet of immense pressure, blistering dayside, but always a night that remembers you are listening. Here is the first gentle fact, shaped into a footprint on your memory. The universe holds many types of exoplanets: the rocky, the gassy, the icy, the ocean-bearing. The classification is not a parade of labels, but a spectrum of possibilities that encourage your mind to drift from one shore to another. You might glide along to the edge of a star's warmth and watch a world that wears its atmosphere like a veil, a semi-transparent shawl of wind and cloud, where light filters through and the colors soften. Another world might be a desert of glass, where the winds scrawl their ancient language on a crystal surface. And somewhere, perhaps beyond the reach of every telescope so far, a small, quiet rock sits quietly in the star's gentle gravity, its surface a memory of oceans that could exist beneath a different sky. In this whispered taxonomy of reality, you don't need to decide what is most beautiful. You can simply allow the number of possibilities to widen your breath into a more expansive calm. Do you feel that? The breath slows some more as you settle deeper into this tour, as if the night itself loosens a few knots in your shoulders. Another subtle fact drifts toward us, carried on the sweep of starlight. Humans learn to detect exoplanets primarily through a patient, almost ceremonial process called a transit. When a planet passes between us and its star, the star's light dips minutely, a heartbeat of light that tells a story, a chorus of shadows revealing the planet's size. We measure the minute dimming and watch how it repeats with the planet's orbital rhythm. It is not a dramatic unveiling, but a patience-filled reveal, like watching a bloom unfold in slow motion. The star does not vanish. It merely gives up a fragment of its glow so that the world can be seen, not in a blaze of spectacle, but in a careful, almost meditative manner. If you listen closely, you can hear the cosmic accountant tallying the data, the quiet numbers that become a map of distant worlds. And you, listening, become part of the method, the patient observer, breathing with the cadence of the cosmos as you float through the corridor of time. In this meditative state, you visit a world that physics loves to describe as a teacup orbiting a kettle. Its orbit is not always a neat circle, but sometimes a small ellipse, an oval that widens and narrows as the star tugs with patient insistence. The idea of a non-perfect circle might feel a little jolt in your chest, but then it softens like a memory that remembers it is safe. A planet with an elongated orbit endures seasons longer than our memory can hold, long days that gradually yield to long nights. The climate there would not rush through afternoon. It would wander like a traveler who takes a turn at every corner, pausing to notice a cloud's shadow or the way sunlight pools in a low valley. This is not a harsh fact, but a quiet invitation to imagine how time might stretch differently beyond our own blue and white home. And as you imagine, you notice your own breath stretching too. Inhale, exhale, and let the idea settle in your chest, as if a star had decided to gently nest there for a moment before continuing its journey. Let's harbor a second gentle truth, a fact tucked in between the glow of the stars. Some exoplanets are in orbits so compatible with their star's gravity that they become locked, keeping the same face toward the sun at all times, a phenomenon called tidal locking. You've heard of a moon that never ages or a shoreline that never retreats. Here we have a planet whose days last longer than its years in the simplest sense, its nights perhaps long enough to cradle questions you've never asked aloud. The night side might be cold and quiet, the day side a furnace of wind and light, and in the boundary where the two meet there is a twilight that breathes with you, a soft, ceaseless glow. Imagine standing on such a world, in a place where twilight is not a temporary hush, but a steady candle kept burning by a patient universe. The air would carry the memory of both warmth and chill, a reminder that balance, not extremes, sustains life as a song. You do not need to travel there to understand it. You only need to listen to the idea soften your sense of distance, the way a lullaby can soothe a tense muscle into release. Here is the next small, luminous fact, woven into a miniature scene. The atmosphere of some exoplanets could hold winds as swift as thousands of miles per hour, tearing across the heavens with the force of a stormy sea, yet the world's calm remains intact in the long arc of its day and night. Picture a planet where the air is a constant current, the clouds sculpted by weather that never quite reaches you but reaches your imagination. On such a world, the sky would be a gallery of shifting color, the horizon a sketch that never finishes, because the art of weather is always painting anew. You might imagine stepping outside under a tinted glow, feeling a breeze that tastes of salt and ozone, hearing the faint whistle of air racing across the planet's upper layers. The fact that exotic climes exist, with atmospheres that blaze with wind or calm into a whisper, becomes not a data point, but a doorway into a sensory meditative state, a reminder that nature's variety is a kind of mercy, letting your mind float free to roam and return. As you drift, another gentle fact attends your attention, not as an equation, but as a shoreline of memory. There are planetary systems where oceans, if they exist, might be bound not to one planet, but to many. On some worlds, the pressure and temperature could allow liquid water to pool on the surface, a quiet possibility that a single breath could cradle in a dream. The oceans, if they exist, would glow with the glow of starlight filtered through clouds, a soft blue or emerald in the gloom, a living mirror of the sky above. You are invited to imagine dipping a finger into that water, watching ripples form and vanish, a tiny universe of motion that dissolves at your touch. Even if these oceans remain unseen by our eyes for now, the idea of them is a soothing presence. Water in the cosmos, a universal symbol of life's patience and persistence. And perhaps, if you listen very closely, you may hear a distant analogy from your own heart, how breath moves in and out, how time moves in and out, how sleep itself invites a gentle renewal. Let us rest for a moment in contemplative pauses, a series of soft, spaced breaths that mimic the slow harmonies of distant orbits. Inhale with the sense of gathering light, exhale with the sense of releasing heat. Inhale, the mind gathers the catalogue of worlds. Exhale, the mind dissolves the day's distractions into the quiet seam of night. And as you float, know that there is another kind of fact that explorers hold close. There are planets that are not bound to any star at all, floating in the interstellar sea. They are called rogue planets, wanderers that drift through the galaxy, unbound by sunlight, yet not lost to wonder. Imagine a world that does not circle a star, but drifts with a patient, universal time, its own weather system guided by internal heat and perhaps internal oceans. It would be a world of solitude, perhaps a little lonely in its loneliness, but there would be a profound peace in a planet that chooses its own pace, its own path through the cosmos. you do not have to fear. The idea of such a world is a companionship of distance, a reminder that even in separation, there can be a form of companionship, the kind that invites your own heart to settle into its own rhythm in this very moment. We continue the tour with another gentle fact, subtly laid into a tiny parable. The concept of a habitable zone, the region around a star where a planet could maintain temperatures that allow liquid water on its surface, if other conditions permit. It's not a guarantee that life exists, but a window, a soft opening in which certain temperatures might cradle the possibility of oceans and climates that gently balance. The phrase invites you to consider, what if there is a world where the weather would be just comfortable enough to sustain quiet, reflective life? The image invites you to consider your own sense of comfort here in the present moment, breathing in the possibility of balance, breathing out the tension that rose against your shoulders. In this space, the facts become less a list and more a meditation on what it would mean to stand on a shore where the sea is not violent, but patient, where the sun sets slowly and the night arrives with an invitation to rest. Now a softer, almost lullaby-like turn of thought arrives. Exoplanets have taught us how many kinds of skies a planet can wear. Some boast skies that glow with the reflection of their star, a pale, constant light that never disappears. But others host perpetual dusk or dawn, the light never fully bright or dark, a perpetual seam where day and night touch each other. And in that seam there is a strange, comforting music, an invitation to listen to the universe's slow pulse. When you listen to that pulse, you feel yourself becoming a tiny reader of a grand catalogue. Each world is a paragraph in a long, patient book, and you are allowed to turn the page slowly, letting the words dissolve into your quiet breath. The facts that build this vision help your imagination relax. The diversity of exoplanets is not a threat, but a lullaby of possibility, a reminder that vastness is not a barrier. It is a promise that wonder can be found, even when the mind feels heavy with sleep. A final small constellation of ideas settles around you, as though a constellation's stars arrange themselves to guide your rest. There are thousands of exoplanets known today, and countless more await discovery, each one a thread in a tapestry that grows only larger with every telescope pointed upward, and every whisper of data collected in a softly counting daylight. The precise numbers shift like the tides, but the underlying comfort remains. There is always more to learn and more time to learn it. The process itself is a patient art, data collected during a transit, light curves slowly charted, spectra revealing the ghostly signatures of molecules in an atmosphere. It is science as a lullaby, methodical, quiet, and endlessly patient, the way the ocean's surface changes from minute to minute, yet feels timeless when you listen to it with your eyes closed. You might wonder, as you drift deeper, what these discoveries feel like in the body. The act of listening to remote science can be a tactile sensation, a tickle along your spine where a new fact lands, a soft warmth at your chest where the idea of an ocean on a far-off world makes your heart expand slightly, a hum in your temples as you imagine stars pinpricking the dark. The body mirrors the mind's journey through distance. It grows calm, begins to breathe in a slower, deeper rhythm, and settles into a gentle weight on the bed, as if gravity itself has grown kinder. Your thoughts become small boats on a quiet lake, and your attention to the boats becomes the ripples that soothe the surface, soothing you further into sleep. The quiet science becomes not a syllabus, but a shoreline. You touch the water, and it returns your touch with a whisper of mist. Each fact, each little vignette of a world, is a stone laid along the bank of your rest, guiding you toward a shoreline where you can rest your head and dream of all the skies you have seen from your own window, and all the skies you might see one day when you drift again. Between breaths, you glimpse a quiet closing thought, not loud, just true. The cosmos is generous in its distance. It offers you distance not as a barrier, but as a sanctuary. When you look at the night sky, you do not merely see emptiness. You witness a theater of gentle possibilities, a schedule of wonders that invites your own life to unfold at its own pace. Each distant world is a reminder that you too are a traveler, and the path you walk today has its own pace, its own weather, its own hush of stars. Inhale the calm, exhale the day's designs. Let the memory of these distant worlds drift through you like a soft sea mist, blurring the lines between wakefulness and sleep until you finally settle. And now, with the softest of good nights, may you take with you the sense that you have traveled not in a hurry, but in a long, breathing whisper. You have leaned into the comforting certainty that there are worlds beyond your own, wearing atmospheres of wind and light, with oceans that glow faintly under starlight, and with cores that beat with their own ancient rhythm. They do not demand your attention. They offer a moment of invitation, a chance to slow, to listen, to become a part of something larger than the day. In that invitation, you are free to let go. Your shoulders release their grip on the world you've carried all day. Your jaw softens, your eyes grow heavier with the weight of sleep, and your breath finds a slower tempo, the tempo of the universe winding down into rest. You are not alone in this drift. You are accompanied by the patient, quiet science of distant skies, by the infinite patience of light, by the soft, unhurried harbor of night.